Chapter 654. Punches, kicks, knee strikes, the attacks were endless. After Elder Yun Yu defeated Do Mion's blade force, he was in control of the situation. Under the continuous attacks, Do Mion was sent flying in the air. He could not even form a complete blade force, but he still held his Tianyo blade tightly. Elder Yun Yu said so much, but he still could not remember who Elder Yun Yu was. There were some obstacles in the process of controlling the ethereal palace, but they were all easily crushed. There was no opponent that left a deep impression on him. In the process of being suppressed, he spoke intermittently. Zhongqin is just one of my subordinates. There is no other relationship. Who are you? This was the most ridiculous thing in the world. The person who you regarded as your enemy did not even know who you were. When a prominent family came, you were like a speck of dust. He just casually placed a piece and easily destroyed all your efforts. Your plan, your forbearance, and your plan, no one knows about it at all. However, Elder Cloud Wanderer suddenly woke up from his rage. I sacrificed 80 years of my life to push the third outer tower and have the strength to fight. Is it just for a moment of anger? He asked himself in his heart. Suddenly, he kicked Omion to the ground. His hand pinched the mountain seal, and an invisible pressure surged. An illusory mountain seal was fixed in the air, and Domion could not move for a moment. Wait until your golden body fades. Then I will kill you. It was undeniable that Domion's battle golden body was really strong. After suffering such continuous attacks, he still seemed to be unharmed. He did not even spit out a mouthful of blood, and he still wanted to use his blade. But this kind of supernatural power would not last long. Elder Yin Yu chose to suppress him, wait for the supernatural power to fade, and then come back to kill him. It was undoubtedly a rational choice. The most important thing now was, of course, the Cloud Top Palace. Elder Yin suppressed Do Mion and immediately flew back to the pavilion. He reached out his hand to grab the only real cloud pattern token in the past. The white-robed Taoist child in the past was completely unaware of what was happening in front of him. He still had a reserved expression as he handed over the cloud pattern token to a black-robed cultivator in the past who was wearing a bamboo hat. Elder Yinyu reached out and snatched the cloud pattern token. In the past, the black-robed cultivator also took the cloud pattern token. However, the token in the past was already illusory. It was no different from the other afterimages in the past. Old Cloud Traveler's eyes inadvertently glanced at the black-clothed cultivator, but he didn't feel anything special. However, when he looked at the white-clothed cultivator, his memory somehow became clear, and he was shocked. He didn't know why he didn't notice it at first, but now that he took a closer look, he realized that the white-robed Taoist child looked too familiar. It was clearly him when he was still a child. It's a coincidence. Yin Young suppressed the uneasiness in his heart and held the cloud pattern token tightly. No matter what, he had obtained the secret token to enter and exit the Cloud Top Asgard, and had the opportunity to inherit the entire Cloud Top Asgard. A sense of satisfaction rippled in his heart. He had waited for this moment for far too long. Among the three factions of Qi Yunshan, the Ethereal Palace was the weakest. He originally planned to secretly control the Ethereal Palace and gain the upper hand in the meeting of Qi Yunshan. However, before he could succeed, Do Mion interfered. Do Mion accidentally learned some secrets of the Ethereal Palace. He decisively took action and subdued the Ethereal Palace. The Chung State turned a blind eye, not because they were afraid of Do Mion, but because they were afraid of the Do clan and the Chu State behind Do Mion. Of course, he didn't dare to resist, so he had to find another way. He was indeed less than 30 years old, which was why he was qualified to enter Qi Yunshan. The reason why he looked so old was because he paid a huge price. He sacrificed 80 years of his lifespan to push himself to the third level. Only then did he have the ability to defeat Do Mion. He paid such a huge price, of course. He had a big plan. The fruit of victory was indeed sweet. He held the cloud pattern token and looked at Do Mion cruelly. How long can you maintain your supernatural power? 20 breaths? 30 breaths? It's really a pity that the legitimate son of the Do clan died here. However, Domion didn't look at him, but looked at the sky. He was firmly suppressed by the Shan word seal, but he didn't loosen his grip on the Tian Yi saber, pretending to be mysterious. Elder Yin Yu said disdainfully, but his heart was covered with a layer of shadow, so he also raised his head. At this moment, he suddenly realized that the clouds outside the mountains seemed to have resumed their movement. This could mean that Qi Yunshan's time had started to balance. What did this mean? Old man Yinyu lowered his head abruptly. The cloud-patterned token in his hand was melting bit by bit, slowly and resolutely, like flowing water. He finally knew where his uneasiness came from. The 2B asterisk cheese from the Lingxiao pavilion didn't follow him to the guest pavilion. He had prepared many tricks for them, but he didn't have time to use them. He once thought that the two of them were too weak to break his restraint, but he was obviously wrong. The 2B asterisk cheese were not tempted by the cloud top Asgard at all, and directly went to pick the supernatural power fruit. However, even if the supernatural power fruit was picked, Qi Yunshan's time was about to end. He already had the cloud pattern token. Why did it lose its effect? Could it be that the cloud top Asgard already had a master? No. Elder Yinyu howled in pain. He desperately wanted to hold the cloud pattern token. He wanted to hold on to all his hopes, but this token was very stubborn and finally disappeared without a trace. Ha ha ha! Domion, who was suppressed under the mountain character seal, laughed presumptuously. A good plan failed on the verge of success. Old man, how does it feel? You're about to die, and you still talk so much. Elder Yunyu gritted his teeth and rushed to Domion. But suddenly, the sky and earth turned upside down, and the scene collapsed. On the top of Qi Yunshan Mountain, the cloud stairs fell from the sky, which made Jiang Wang and Yi Qingyu inexplicably shocked. At the same time, they also noticed that the clouds outside the mountain returned to normal, and the different flow of time was erased. They knew that Qi Yunshan's time was over. But what did the cloud stairs in front of them mean? What did it lead to? Are we going to leave Qi Yunshan from here? Jiang Wang asked. Yi Qingyu still looked at it blankly. I don't know, either, she said embarrassedly. Let's go up and take a look, Jiang Wang suggested. Yi Qingyu drove the cloud carriage of 7 colors forward, wanting to rush directly into the sky. But a gentle force pushed her. The cloud carriage of 7 colors and Yi Qingyu were pushed back to the top of the mountain. But Jiang Wang was left behind. Jiang Wang landed on the cloud stairs with a blank face, and his whole body was rising rapidly, while the cloud stairs below him were dissipating bit by bit. Don't come down. Let's go up and take a look. Yi Qingyu suddenly thought of something, standing on the cloud carriage of 7 colors and shouting. Jiang Wang's heart moved, so he didn't resist. The next moment, he penetrated the huge hole in the sky. Chapter 655. Before entering the hole in the sky, Jiang Wang vaguely saw a white-haired old man desperately flying to the top of the mountain. But it was just a flash of thought, and the world in front of him was already different. This was a ruin, an extremely magnificent ruin. It seemed inappropriate to use the word magnificent to describe the ruin, but it was indeed the truest feeling in Jiang Wang's heart. The pillars to the sky were broken in front of him, and the fragments of the glazed tiles had lost their luster. Broken walls and ruins were everywhere, and prosperity had fallen. Even the occasional breeze couldn't stir the dead silence. The story of this place was buried in dust. It was impossible to fly here. There was an ancient rule that was soaked in history. It was as if the ancient honor was still stubbornly reserved after a long period of withering. In front of him was a broken lamp. Jiang Wang walked around it and landed on a piece of floor tile that only had a small part of it left. Patter! The floor tile was easily stepped on and scattered like a pile of sand. Jiang Wang moved quickly and walked forward. Some of the floor tiles were intact, but some had long decayed. They would disappear with a gentle touch. Under the floor tile was a jade-like foundation. There were faint and complex dark lines on it, which made Jiang Wang not want to touch it directly. Cloud top Asgard. Facing all this, the first thing Jiang Wang thought of was the cloud top Asgard mentioned by Domion. Although what he saw was already a ruin, he could still imagine its greatness from the broken present. Perhaps only Asgard could describe it. However, if the place connected to the end of the cloud stairs was the cloud top Asgard, it couldn't explain why it suddenly appeared. Plucking the supernatural fruit was obviously not the reason for the appearance of the cloud top Asgard. Otherwise, why would Domion and Wanderer fight to the death in the guest pavilion? At least there should be the so-called secret order to enter the cloud top Asgard, right? But there seemed to be no other possibility except for the cloud top Asgard. Then what was the reason for its appearance? What conditions did he meet? He couldn't figure it out for a while. Jiang Wang stopped his train of thought and carefully observed his way inside. The place he was at seemed to be a large hall. It had already collapsed beyond recognition, but one could still vaguely feel the outline of what it used to be. So far, the ruin that had left the deepest impression on Jiang Wang was the withered yard. The atmosphere there was strange, and there were traces of inexplicable horror. The place in front of him must have been much grander than the withered yard when it was intact, but he could only feel a deathly stillness when he walked in it. A dead silence where even terror did not exist. Judging from the broken walls and debris, there were traces of battle everywhere. There were sharp cuts and potholes everywhere. However, there were no corpses or bloodstains. It was as if everything here had been annihilated by time. Walking through the ruins, Jiang Wang could imagine that if this place could be restored, he wouldn't be more conspicuous than an ant. He had been to Donghua Pavilion and seen the Qi Palace of the most powerful country in the world. However, the scale of the Qi King Palace was far inferior. What kind of power had destroyed such a magnificent palace? Why was the former Cloud Top Immortal Palace destroyed? Why can I enter here, but Yi Qingyu, who has the inheritance of Qi Yunshan, can't? What about Do Mian, who has subdued the ethereal palace, and Elder Cloud Traveler, who travels alone? Can they enter here? Jiang Wang had countless questions in his mind, but there was no one to ask. For some reason, Jiang Yin remained silent. He was sure that Jiang Yin might know something, but if Jiang Yin didn't want to say, he couldn't force him. He could only rely on himself to find the answer. For many years in the past, he had been walking alone like this. He was already very used to this. He walked very lightly. He always felt that if he stepped a little harder, this place would collapse again. The broken immortal palace was still tall, and people walking in it still couldn't see the end at a glance. After turning around a place that should be an arched door, there was a screen wall in front of him. It was a screen wall that had been through countless years and was still largely intact. There were beautiful carvings on the screen wall, which seemed to depict a group of beautiful fairies dancing. These carvings were also rare and somewhat clear. It was as if they were protected by some kind of power that had resisted the damage that destroyed the entire Cloud Top Immortal Palace. However, the two words written in blood on it destroyed all of its beauty. These two bloody characters were written elegantly and freely. The writer must have been a free and easy person, but the feeling they gave off was ferocious and terrifying. There was a kind of hopeless fear coming from the bloody characters. These two characters were Dao, thief. Below the bloody characters, there was a long bloody handprint. It seemed that the person who had written these two bloody characters had just written these two characters when they were dragged away by some terrifying existence. Dao thief. Jiang Wang repeatedly chewed on these two words. Dao thief. Dao thief. Was it a person or a faction? A kind of monster? A kind of secret art? In this collapsed Cloud Top Immortal Palace, the two words Dao thief were the only clue he had found so far. But he still couldn't deduce any answer. He didn't even know anything about the Cloud Top Immortal Palace. He didn't even know how he got in. The only thing he knew was that Cloud Top Immortal Palace's mountain gate should be located at Qiyun Mountain. The Cloud Tower of the Yun Nation, the Azure Cloud Pavilion of the Yong Nation, the Ethereal Palace of the Chung Nation, and the solitary Yin Yoing were all related to Cloud Top Immortal Palace. Jiang Wang made a hand seal, and the shackles stretched out from the void, gently touching the two bloody characters. His original intention was to feel the two characters through the shackles and obtain more information. In such a mysterious place, he naturally couldn't directly feel it with his hands. However, when the pitch-black shackles touched the bloody characters, something strange happened. The two bloody characters disappeared stroke by stroke, and the entire shackles were erased section by section. It was as if the shackles were just fake chains painted on, and someone had directly wiped them off with a rag. Jiang Wang wouldn't forget that Zhong Qin had disappeared in front of them like this at the guest pavilion in the south of Cloudtop Immortal Palace. Every shackles had a limit to their length. Jiang Wang had already stretched the shackles to their limits, but he could only watch as they became shorter and shorter. When the two bloody characters on the screen wall completely disappeared, Jiang Wang's shackles also disappeared. He had worked so hard to stretch two shackles, but one of them immediately disappeared just because he touched the bloody characters. The loss could be said to be great, and with the disappearance of the two characters, Dao Thief, Jiang Wang faintly felt that something was gently tied to his Dao heart. He couldn't see clearly, and he couldn't think clearly. At the same time, the screen wall in front of him suddenly distorted. Everything he saw and felt was undergoing a wonderful change. Jiang Wang seemed to suddenly jump out of the Cloudtop Immortal Palace and overlook here from a completely different angle. It was as if he was in the void of the universe, in an unknown place. The ruins of the Cloudtop Immortal Palace were constantly shrinking, but Jiang Wang himself seemed to be constantly expanding. At this moment, he seemed to sense the many scattered light spots in the vast universe. A kind of understanding arose in his heart. Those were the fragments of the Cloudtop Immortal Palace. Chapter 656. The Cloudtop Immortal Palace was a huge cluster of palaces, and now it was all in ruins. Jiang Wang didn't explore too far during this period. The shackles of imprisonment and the words thief offset each other, and the exploration ended. At this moment, the entire palace ruins shrunk infinitely in front of him, and he expanded in the vast void. It was a kind of expansion that was affected by the consciousness and not completely real. Now, the Cloudtop Immortal Palace ruins hovered in front of him and became only the size of a palm. Looking down at the Cloudtop Immortal Palace ruins from this level, one could still see the various details, but they were all very small. Jiang Wang was at a loss about everything that was happening in front of him. But the Cloudtop Immortal Palace ruins seemed to have a mind of their own and directly crashed toward Jiang Wang. It crashed into the 5 Prefectures Sea. At this moment, in the 5 Prefectures Sea, on the boundless surface of the sea, the huge heavenly isolated island stood still, and the Dao Vein Dragon stopped on the heavenly isolated island. And the red sun in the sky was the first inner palace that nurtured the true Samadhi fire. After the ruins of the Cloudtop Immortal Palace crashed into it, it covered the sky for a moment, and the entire 5 Prefectures Sea seemed to be covered in a shadow. But soon it began to shrink again. It shrank to about 1/5 the size of the heavenly isolated island. In the sky above the 5 Prefectures Sea, clouds formed. Clouds and mist were originally inseparable, but Jiang Wang had already cleared away the ignorance. This cloud was completely different from the fog of ignorance and had nothing to do with Jiang Wang. It came from the Cloudtop Immortal Palace. The cloud gathered and lifted the Cloudtop Immortal Palace in the air. The 5 Prefectures Sea trembled and then slowly calmed down and stopped. Jiang Wang's 5 Prefectures Sea was different from now on. At the bottom was the boundless sea, and on the surface of the sea was the vast and lively heavenly isolated island. The simple and majestic heavenly isolated palace appeared as the Dao Vein Dragon and stopped on the island. And in the sky above the island, clouds appeared, and the ruins of the palace stopped on the clouds. Above the clouds was the first inner palace that appeared as the red sun. This miraculous scene was completely different from any other cultivator he had seen before. At this moment, Jiang Wang of course understood that for some reason he owned the Cloudtop Immortal Palace. Or rather, he was forcibly moved in by the Cloudtop Immortal Palace. In a sense, he should have received the inheritance of the Cloudtop Immortal Palace. However, he had no idea what he had inherited. The Cloudtop Immortal Palace had already entered his 5 palace seas and hovered below his first inner palace, but he still knew nothing about it. Perhaps the cloud-top immortal palace had once been glorious and great, but the fact was that Jiang Wang had only obtained a desolate ruin. Divine techniques, secret techniques, artifacts, treasures, ancient secret manuals. None of them were there. He was still puzzled, but the situation had changed. Qi Yunshan's time was about to end, or rather, the power that supported Qi Yunshan's various transformations could no longer continue. Elder Yunyu and Do Mian were squeezed out of the Qi Yunshan scene at the same time and fell out of the welcoming pavilion. The small pavilion in the south of Qi Yun Mountain once again returned to its original dilapidated state. At this time, the golden light on Do Mian's body had already dimmed. It was obvious that he could no longer maintain his battle-golden body. Old man Yunyu hated him so much that after he fell out of the pavilion, he didn't choose to kill him immediately. Instead, he flew to the top of the mountain, because the moment he fell out of the pavilion, he had already sensed the changes at the top of Qi Yun Mountain. He knew that the cloud stairs had appeared and the cloud-top immortal palace had opened. He had bet 80 years of his life on this. If he couldn't enter the cloud-top immortal palace and obtain the inheritance, it would be a complete failure and a fate worse than death. He almost exploded with the fastest speed in his life, rushing straight to the top of the mountain like an arrow released from a bow. However, he could only watch as the cloud stairs disappeared and the handsome young man stepped into the huge hole in the sky. He even flew up and rushed to the front of the hole. The huge hole that represented the path to the cloud-top immortal palace was mercilessly closed to him. It was too cruel. How unfair was heaven, and how cruel was fate. He gave up the possibility of supernatural powers and stepped into the outer building in advance. He gave up 80 years of his life and gave up everything he had. He defeated Do Mian of the Chu Do family at the welcoming pavilion and won the secret order to enter and exit the cloud-top immortal palace. In the end, the cloud-top immortal palace was taken by a young man who came from nowhere. They didn't do anything. They were so cowardly that they only wanted to take the chance to take the supernatural powers fruit. But now, not only was the supernatural powers fruit theirs, even the cloud-top immortal palace had become theirs. Where was the justice? The more Cloud Traveler thought, the more hatred he felt. He turned around and stared at Yi Qingyu, who was still at the top of Qi Yun Mountain. Miss of the High Heaven Pavilion. He sneered. Yiling Xiao will pay something for you, right? For example, something to increase your lifespan? Even in Qi Yunshan, his 3 saint towers were still clearly reflected. Yi Qingyu stood on the 7-colored flag cloud carriage and silently strengthened the defense of the 7-colored flag cloud carriage. She replied indifferently, "For me, of course he is willing to do anything and can give you any price you want. But the only problem is, do you dare to look for him? There is more than one way to make a deal." Cloud Traveler swooped down. "I don't need to look for him." She formed a seal with her hands, and with the power to collapse the mountain, a mountain seal directly hit the dark blue light shield. The entire dark blue light shield and the 7-colored flag cloud carriage in the light shield were pressed to the ground. Yi Qingyu formed a seal and activated the red flag. Raging flames spewed out, and the entire Qi Yun Mountain became a sea of fire. Cloud Traveler was forced to retreat. The green flag moved again, and in an instant, the flying leaves were like knives, dense and ferocious. Almost in an explosive burst, the faintly discernible mountain seal was cut open. The 2 4-winged ink warriors each took one side and had already received her orders. They leaped with black knives and attacked Cloud Traveler at the same time. Her movements were smooth and without any sluggishness. Facing Cloud Traveler, who was much stronger than her, Yi Qingyu showed a rather amazing fighting spirit. Compared to the time when she fought with the ferocious beasts in the 3 Mountains city, it was simply incomparable. It seemed that although she had not killed anyone, the various trials that Yiling Xiao had arranged for her were very effective. After all, he was a perfected master, and after becoming a perfected master, he spared no effort in cultivating his daughter. Under such circumstances, it was difficult for Yi Qingyu not to be strong. At this time, Cloud Traveler frowned. Yi Qingyu's performance surprised him, but it was only a surprise. The four-winged ink warriors were of course precious and powerful, but after all, they were only intermansion forces and could not stop him. What really gave him a headache was the seven-colored flag carriage that he could not see any flaws in for the time being, and the figure that was rushing from the mountainside, Domion. He felt that he was a little distracted. In order to fight for the cloud-top immortal palace, he did not immediately kill Domion. Now that he did not snatch the cloud-top immortal palace, he turned around and planned to recover his losses in the cloud-top pavilion, but he had to face Domion. It was as if fate was against him, and everything he did was not going well. The cloud-top immortal palace has already been taken by the boy surnamed Dugu. Cloud travelers suppressed the distracting thoughts and immediately shouted, Domion, take down Yi Qingyu with me and threaten that boy. We still have a chance to snatch the cloud-top immortal palace. We will divide all the gains equally. He urged Domion repeatedly, as if he and Domion were indestructible allies and not some mortal enemy. Hurry up! When that boy inherits the cloud-top immortal palace, with the help of the palace, we will all be wiped out. Chapter 657. For Elder Yunyu, his goal was always the cloud-top immortal palace. He could give up anything else, including his jealousy and hatred. The cloud-top immortal palace was his deepest obsession. He did not hesitate to give up his hatred and promise to share the benefits with Domion to achieve his goal. But for Domion, the situation was different. When he was at the guest pavilion, Domion could have broken through the mountain seal, but he deliberately did not. He hit a killer move and waited for Elder Yunyu to kill him to counterattack. For this reason, he did not hesitate to watch the battle golden body disappear, which was to show his weakness. However, Elder Yunyu let him go and chose to snatch the cloud pattern token from the white-robed child. Continue to wait for the opportunity or fight. At that time, he had already made the decision. The reason why he gave up the cloud pattern token was that he had already lost the confrontation with Elder Yunyu. Besides a hidden killer move, he did not have the confidence to turn the tables. He had already accepted the result of Elder Yunyu occupying the cloud-top immortal palace. He did not expect that accidents would happen. In the end, Ling Xiao Pavilion, who did not enter the guest pavilion at all, would take the initiative. He took the opportunity to anger Elder Yunyu and wanted to kill him while he was distracted. But before that, the guest pavilion had already squeezed him out. After falling out of the guest pavilion, Elder Yunyu chose to rush to the top of the mountain. Now, Domion was faced with a new choice. With his strength, no matter which side he joined, it would change the situation. Domion held the sky wildsword and praised, "Good idea." But he changed the topic. What if that kid is not threatened? If it were you, would you give up the cloud-top immortal palace for a woman? Of course not. As Old Cloud Traveler fought with the four-winged ink warrior, he said, but he doesn't dare to not be threatened, because he was invited by High Heaven Pavilion. If anything happens to Yi Qingyu here, Ling Xiao won't let him off. You are right. Domion's smile suddenly disappeared. But I am also afraid that Ling Xiao will not let me go. He turned to Yi Qingyu and said, Miss Yi, how about we make a deal? When your people come out, no matter what inheritance there is in the cloud-top immortal palace, you'll give me 30%. How about it? I can guarantee your safety and help you kill this annoying old bastard. This deal should be very cost-effective for Yi Qingyu, allowing her to get out of danger immediately. Moreover, Domion was probably offended by Old Man Yun, so he showed great sincerity. He even took the initiative to compromise before she spoke. 20%. I only want 20%. Moreover, the great Chudo clan will be friends with High Heaven Pavilion in the future. My ethereal palace will help you out. But Yi Qingyu only shook her head slightly. It was very small, but very determined. Brother Dugu is my friend, not my subordinate. The cloud-top immortal palace is his gain. I can't be generous and make decisions for him. If he is your friend, he will not reject this deal. Domion looked at her and said slowly, After all, how can a friend watch you die? Maybe he won't refuse, but that's his business, and only he can decide for himself. Yi Qingyu activated her divine power, and cloud patterns appeared on her forehead. This cloud pattern was simple, but faintly discernible and noble. The light of the cloud pattern was faint, adding a trace of divinity to her usual beauty, like a goddess descending to the world. She said, "He will make his decision, and I will make mine." Dong Mian's smile froze. No room for discussion? Yi Qingyu did not speak, but the answer was very clear. "Misty, it seems like you won't give me a choice." Dong Mian turned the blade in his hand, and without hesitation, slashed at the 7-colored flag cloud carriage. He was from the main branch of the Dou clan. He could not leave without any gains on this trip to Qi Cloud Mountain. 20% of the gains from the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace was enough for him to restrain himself. In addition to the goodwill of the great Chu Dou clan, it was completely worth it. But he was still rejected. Was Cloud City's High Heaven Pavilion really so arrogant? He had calmly made his choice, choosing less but more reliable gains. But Yi Qingyu's rejection made him lose the choice. If he did not want to end up with nothing, he could only agree to Old Man Yun's suggestion. It could be seen how stupid this Yi Qingyu was. Just a bag of skin. The Tianyo blade cut through the sky. The exaggerated blade head was like a knife that cut open a cow. It easily broke through the dark blue light shield and slashed at Yi Qingyu on the 7-colored flag cloud carriage. The third style of the 7 fighting styles was precisely the loss of skin. It specialized in killing good skin. At the same time, there were consecutive explosions in the sky, and countless pieces of the 4-winged ink warriors fell. Old Man Yun, who had waited for Dong Mian to make a decision, finally stopped restraining his strength and attacked with all his strength, shattering the 2 valuable 4-winged ink warriors. Together, they pounced at Yi Qingyu. A cloud pattern appeared between Yi Qingyu's eyebrows. She had already used the cloud seal ability. With the point of her right hand, the clouds in the sky became a galloping horse, a furious lion, a fierce tiger, a hungry wolf. Countless cloud beasts surged forward, almost drowning Old Man Yun in an instant. Seal. In ancient times, some people would use the term cloud seal to refer to Taoist talismans. But the real cloud seal ability was using the cloud seal to command the heavens and earth. Simply speaking, in the specific performance, it could greatly shorten or even erase the time needed to form hand seals, because the cloud seal ability itself had already replaced the seal. Chunggung Sheng seal could achieve the effect of pseudo-instantaneous casting for a certain period of time. In essence, it was to speed up the process of forming hand seals. And the cloud seal ability's scope of application was even wider. The effect of the cloud seal ability was even more exquisite. The essence of the cloud seal was command seal, and the performance of the cloud seal was substitute. Taoist talismans could be cultivated to a high level, and it could summon gods and ghosts and suppress demons and ghosts. It was a first-class method. After the cloud seal ability matured, it would not be a problem. The reason why people in ancient times used the term cloud seal to refer to Taoist talismans was because the cloud seal ability could even replace talismans at a high level. After hundreds of years, the cloud seal ability reappeared. Yi Qingyu pointed with her right hand, and the cloud beasts besieged Old Man Yun. She pointed with her left hand and moved the green flag. The 7-colored flag cloud carriage suddenly accelerated, trying to break away from Dong Mian's blade momentum. Then the yellow flag moved again, and on the top of Mount Qiyun, 4 tall stone men stood up shakily, broke through the sound of the wind, and fearlessly pounced on Dong Mian. This set of techniques was dazzling, and the cloud seal had replaced all the seals. Dong Mian's blade momentum did not change, and like a fish swimming in the water, it moved easily. With just a slight sweep, the flesh disintegrated, the skin was broken, and the 4 tall stone men disintegrated instantly. And in midair, the voice of Old Man Yun was filled with jealousy and hatred. This divine fruit. Endless light feathers exploded with him as the center, and in an instant, those cloud beasts besieging him were all wiped out. In the magnificent light shadow, his face was ferocious. You actually ate the cloud seal. Chapter 658. Yin Yu was mad with jealousy. If he knew that this fruit could nurture the cloud seal, why would he go to the outer tower so early? Why would he need to use the restrictive spell and sacrifice 80 years of his life? He did not need anything. He just needed to find the right opportunity to snatch this fruit. That was the cloud seal. It was a famous and powerful magical power. Obviously, he did not know that the prerequisite of the cloud seal was to have no karma of life and death, and to have never killed anyone. Compared to Yi Ling Xiao, his understanding of Qi Yinshan was far from being as good as his. But this did not affect his jealousy. Yin Yu felt that his heart was twisted. He was unwilling, dissatisfied, and indignant. Why couldn't he have good things? Why did all the good things belong to others? That Do Mian came from a prominent family and was a young genius. He achieved the inner mansion before he was 20 years old and obtained the battle golden body. He took away the ethereal palace that he had been coveting for a long time. This Yi Qingyu was extremely beautiful and had an extraordinary background. She was the only princess of Yun country, and her father was a famous perfected person. If you want money, you have money. If you want power, you have power. This woman went to Qi Yinshan and did not do anything and did not know anything, but she got the cloud seal. And he worked so hard since he was young. Step by step, he walked forward. That was how he won the trust of Yin Yu and became Yin Yu. For this trip to Qi Yinshan, he had planned in every possible way and had gambled everything he had. He felt that he was gambling with fate. He was a brave warrior who fought against the wind and waves. He was a fighter who fought against the unfair world. But now he had put down a lot of bets, but he still got nothing. He shook off the clear cloud beast in one move and directly pounced on Yi Qingyu. He wished he could cut open her inner mansion and find the seed of Cloud Seal's divine ability. Of course, this was impossible. Once an inner mansion cultivator died, the divine ability seed would also collapse. Yin Yu came here with hatred, while Do Mian also approached with his sword. The Tianai sword was pointed at the cloud carriage. Yi Qingyu just got the new magical power and opened her inner mansion. Although she had the help of the cloud carriage, it was difficult to deal with two powerful opponents. But at this moment, Do Mian and Yin Yu turned around at the same time. There was a figure falling from the sky above Qi Yinshan Mountain. His appearance was delicate and handsome, and his posture was tall and straight. He allowed his body to fall. Amidst the whistling wind, he showed a kind of confidence and freedom. Overlooking the battle taking place at the top of Qi Yun Mountain, his gaze swept over Yi Qingyu, as if saying, "Don't be afraid." It was as if he had jumped over from another time and space. There were no signs beforehand, and when he appeared, it was already a reality. "It's Dugawudi." Old man Yin Yu formed a seal, and Do Mian pulled back his saber to counterattack. Almost at the same time, the two of them changed directions and charged toward Jiangwang. What could he gain from killing Yi Qingyu? What could he gain from breaking the cloud carriage of the rainbow flag? Only by killing this invincible Dugu would he gain something. The divine power seed would disintegrate, but the cloud-top immortal palace would not die with him. As for Jiangwang, it was only after he jumped out of the hole and returned to Qi Yinshan with the cloud-top immortal palace that he truly understood what he had gained. Only then did he truly realize that he had become the master of the cloud-top immortal palace. Because in the near ancient era, Qi Yun Mountain was the mountain gate of the cloud-top immortal palace. When he descended with the cloud-top immortal palace, he had already understood everything here and controlled Qi Yun Mountain. Elder Yin Yu and Do Mian. One of them had 3 outer pavilions, the other had a residence of divine power. If they were in the outside world, when they were at their peak, neither of them would be easy to deal with. But at this time and place, this was Qi Yun Mountain, and he had already become the master of Qi Yun Mountain. There was really just the flip of the hand. As soon as Jiang Wang raised his hand, all the cloud beasts on the mountain roared, their voices shaking the sky. The ferocious cloud beasts on Qi Yun Mountain had already been avoided by Elder Yin Yu and Do Mian, and Yi Qingyu, who was driving the cloud carriage of the rainbow flag, had not truly experienced their power. They were not real life because it was very difficult for living things to survive such a long time like Chiyun Mountain. They were Chiyun Mountain itself, a manifestation of a kind of power. They only guarded a fixed position and did not move out of range, nor would they pursue an attack. This gave enough opportunities for those who entered Chiyun Mountain to pass through easily. But once the master of the mountain gave the order, they would immediately bare their fangs and reveal their most ferocious and powerful side. Elder Yunyu and Do Mian were veterans. When they felt the call of the cloud beasts on the mountain, their first thought was not fear, but killing intent. They had to end the battle quickly before those ferocious cloud beasts arrived and killed Duguwudi first. Elder Yunyu's left hand formed the mountain seal, and his right hand formed the wind seal, calling out to the 3 sacred towers. Starlight shone on his body, and in an instant he unleashed all his strength. As for Do Mian, he turned his blade, and his eyes were filled with indifference. The Tianai blade slashed in an extremely exaggerated arc, and the momentum of the blade suddenly rose. 6 styles of battle, divinity, obliteration. Jiang Wang looked at them calmly, turned his palm, and gently pressed down. Bang! Elder Yunyu and Do Mian were both pressed to the ground. Their limbs were spread out, and they were pressed to the top of the mountain by an invisible force. Their whole bodies were stuck to the soil, and they could not move. The Starlight's sacred tower was isolated in an instant. The mountain seal, wind seal, they all collapsed. The 6 styles of battle did not even have the chance to fully display them. Jiang Wang directly mobilized the power of the entire Chiyun Mountain and carried out a naked suppression. Sure enough, if one step is slow, all will be slow. Do Mian smiled bitterly. He was laughing at himself. He thought highly of himself, but he kept losing to Chiyun Mountain. After accidentally discovering the secret of the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace, he used the power of the Do family, and after a few twists and turns, he determined the 4 forces related to Chiyun Mountain. In the end, he chose the Ethereal Palace and invested a lot to subdue it. It was all for this trip to Chiyun Mountain, for the precious inheritance of the ancient era, but the result was a complete loss. But he did not understand. According to the information he collected, to enter the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace, one must first find the entrance point. For example, in the guest pavilion in the south of the mountain, there was the cloud token in the hands of the white-clothed Taoist child, and in the pool in the north of the mountain, it was said that there was a jade pendant left by a disciple of the ancient Cloud-Top Immortal Palace. He spent a lot of effort to obtain these clues, and he should not be wrong. That was why he and Elder Yunyu fought to the death in the guest pavilion. That was why he did not think that the 2 people from Sky Tower would choose the Divine Power Fruit when the opportunity was right in front of them. If they only took the Divine Power Fruit, it would be fine. The biggest problem was the key had not been obtained. So how did the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace appear? And this Duguwudi, how did he enter the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace? Unlike Do Mian, who was still thinking about the problem and looking for an opportunity, Elder Yunyu, who was also pressed to the ground by Chiyun Mountain, had already lost his mind due to the huge failure and jealousy. He struggled, almost using all his strength to twist his neck so that people could hear the sound of his neck twisting. Bearing such a huge pressure, almost twisting his neck just to stare at Jiang Wang. That was how stubborn he was. His eyes were red as he glared at Jiang Wang. Why? Why can you get the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace? What did you do? What did you pay? Chapter 659. Without experiencing Elder Yunyu's choice, perhaps it would be difficult to understand his stubbornness, his unwillingness, and jealousy. He was like a gambler who had lost his eyes, betting his entire fortune, his land, his house, his wife, and children. Obviously, he could not accept failure, and there was no room for failure. And for Jiang Wang, he did not need and was too lazy to understand Elder Yunyu's emotions. To him, Elder Yunyu and Do Mian were complete strangers and could also be considered as opponents and enemies with clear standpoints. What he needed to do was to defeat them, to break them from their flesh to their will. So he did not even look at the 2 and flew to the top of Mount Chiyun. He only smiled lightly at Yi Qingyu. You have already used your supernatural powers very well. To be honest, when he saw the battle between Yi Qingyu, Do Mian, and Elder Yunyu, he was very amazed. In his heart, his memory of Yi Qingyu's fighting ability was still stuck at the time of Yu Hong Peak's panic. He really did not expect that the Yi Qingyu of today had already become so experienced in fighting. Although she lacked the experience of facing death and lacked some decisiveness and ruthlessness, but the use of moves and the grasp of timing were all top-notch. In the future, when she was completely familiar with the Cloud Seal, she could also be considered as an expert who could hold her own. Thank you. Yi Qingyu smiled sweetly and somewhat wittily replied. You also flipped your palms very powerfully. She was teasing Jiang Wang that just stretched out his hand to attract the cloud beasts and flipped his palms to subdue Do Mian and Elder Yunyu. He indeed had the demeanor of an expert. Jiang Wang's old face turned red. With his authority as the master of the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace, he controlled the power of Mount Qiyin. Mobilizing the power of the mountain could be done with just a thought, and indeed did not need to flip his palms. The reason why he did that was to increase his aura. To put it bluntly, it was not only to subdue the will of the two, but also to show off in front of people. Such a desire to show off, for someone with a calm personality like him, was not often seen. It was nothing more than the nature of a teenager in his bones, occasionally showing off when he got a new toy and wanted to show it off. After all, he was not thick-skinned enough. After being teased by Yi Qingyu, he was somewhat embarrassed. It's not as elegant as your Cloud Seal and exquisite techniques. They were talking and laughing here, while Elder Yunyu was already burning with jealousy. You and Domia, how can people like you reap all the benefits? At this time, the cloud pattern on Yi Qingyu's forehead had faded. The Cloud Seal had a time limit, which was similar to Do Mian's battle golden body. She couldn't help but frown when she heard Elder Yunyu speak without thinking. She was disgusted. As Yi Lingxiao's daughter, the people she usually came into contact with were all extraordinary. In her opinion, cultivators should naturally move forward bravely. Even if they failed, they should not lose their composure like this. Jiang Wang turned around and looked at Elder Yun, who was like a trapped beast, and asked, "What kind of people are we?" Yin Yuan glared at him angrily, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. Ask yourself, how did you get the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace? What did you do for Qi and Shan? What have you done for the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace? What have you done for this day? Just by talking about love, and chatting, you can easily have all of this. He was not afraid of death. In other words, if he failed this time, there was no way he could become a deity. He had lost 80 years of life, so he didn't have much longer to live. How can you? He screamed sadly. The heavens are so unfair. How can the heavens treat me so badly? Jiang Wang didn't want to hear him out. This person was extreme and abnormal, so there was no need to communicate with him. He was about to draw his sword, but there was a change in the 5 prefectures C in his body. To be specific, the change came from the ruins of the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace above the clouds. With a thought, his spirit fell into the ruins of the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace and landed in front of the only relatively intact screen wall. The change he sensed came from here. A picture appeared on the screen wall. It was a white-robed Taoist child. If Jiang Wang saw the past scene of a guest pavilion, he would be able to recognize that this white-robed Taoist child was the child who came and sent people off. He was the child who held the only real cloud pattern token. He bowed to Jiang Wang and said, "Immortal Master, I'm sorry for being presumptuous." It was he who affected the screen wall and revealed his figure, which made Jiang Wang want to come here. Was he a survivor of the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace? Was he an ancient remnant soul? Or was he a later soul host? Jiang Wang maintained his vigilance and asked calmly, "Who are you?" "Immortal Master, there's no need to worry." The white-robed Taoist child said politely, "The Cloud-Top Immortal Palace has already recognized you as its master. Everything in the palace is under your control. This includes this spirit-focused steel. I can shatter it with a thought." So this wasn't a screen wall, but a spirit-focused steel? Spirit focus Jiang Wang hadn't noticed it before, but now that he sensed it carefully, he realized that its material was indeed the same as the spirit-focused jade he saw in the Forest Ocean Origin world. The spirit-focused jade he saw in the Forest Ocean Origin world belonged to Su Qiyun from the Thieving Heaven Manor. It was a treasure passed down to her by her master. It was just a small piece, but it was incomparably precious. At that time, it allowed Guan Yin to reveal his true form. Later on, he also entrusted Little Yu's consciousness to Su Qiyun, giving her a chance to revive Little Yu. And this piece in front of him was so huge. It was precisely because of its size that Jiang Wang didn't even think about the spirit-focused jade, who said that the ruins of the cloud-top immortal palace were worthless. Even if this spirit-focused steel was broken into small pieces and sold, it would still be worth an extraordinary price. Jiang Wang was still in shock when the white-robed Taoist child said, "Moreover, you don't need to think about it. I've been dead for a long time. The one talking to you is just an afterimage left behind in the distant past. It will soon disappear." He asked again, "Immortal Master, may I ask what year it is today?" This wasn't a secret, so Jiang Wang directly replied, "This year is the 3918th year of the Tao calendar. The Tao calendar has been restarted?" The white-robed Taoist child muttered to himself, "Has our era finally come to an end?" Without waiting for Jiang Wang to ask, he hurriedly said, "There's no time left. Immortal Master, I have a request." Jiang Wang naturally wouldn't agree right away. He only asked, "What is it?" Xiao Tong was the receptionist of the cloud-top immortal palace. Because he was too weak, no one paid attention to him. Therefore, he was lucky enough to escape from that catastrophe. The one lying on the ground at the top of Qiyun Mountain is Xiao Tong's reincarnation. All these years, he has been in the cycle of reincarnation, searching for the cloud-top immortal palace. At first, he wanted to find the glory of the cloud-top immortal palace. Later, as he reincarnated, more and more of his memories were lost, and he couldn't remember anything. He only relied on his earliest obsession to find the cloud-top immortal palace again and again. He didn't know how many generations of unwillingness he had accumulated, so he couldn't face failure at all. However, he didn't know this himself. For countless years, he had been in the shadow of the cloud-top immortal palace, never truly living. The white-robed Taoist child said, "I don't ask you to forgive his offense. I only ask you to let him die in peace. Don't bring his unwillingness to the next life." Jiang Wang did have some compassion in his heart. The white-robed Taoist child's afterimage in the past didn't know how many generations he had reincarnated for. Countless years of struggle, but in the end, it was all a dream. It truly reflected the cruelty of fate. However, he was now a fish on the chopping block. It was easy to let Yun Youwing die, but it was quite difficult to let him die in peace. The white-robed Taoist child didn't give him time to think. His figure had already faded and disappeared on the spirit-focused steel. Only a sentence full of regret was left. The opportunity to revive the cloud-top immortal palace lies with him. Chapter 660. Qiyanshan was the mountain gate of the cloud-top immortal palace. At some point in history, the cloud-top immortal palace was reduced to ruins and Qiyanshan was sealed off. The remarkable power fruit was born every 33 years. In fact, it was the final foundation of the cloud-top immortal palace. Every 33 years, it would be able to nurture this little bit of foundation to support Qiyanshan in his quest to find a successor for the cloud-top immortal palace. In other words, the divine power fruit was a rare treasure in the world, but Qiyanshan did not exist for the divine power fruit. He used the divine power fruit as the source of Qiyanshan's power to support the various arrangements of Qiyanshan. For example, the guest pavilion in the south of the mountain, the pool in the north of the mountain, and even the cloud beasts on the mountain. Therefore, once the divine power fruit was plucked, Qiyanshan's time was about to end because his power had been exhausted. Jiang Wang already knew this when he obtained Qiyanshan's authority. What he did not know was why the cloud-top immortal palace was reduced to ruins. According to the boy welcoming the guest, it was a catastrophe. However, before he could say what the catastrophe was, it had already dissipated. He also did not know how to revive the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace. He did indeed possess the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace, but he did not obtain anything other than ruins. He used Qi Yunshan's original power to suppress Yun Youeng and Do Mian. This power could not be recovered by itself. The more it was used, the less it would be. To make an analogy, if Jiang Wang were to use Qi Yunshan as a furnace, then the magical fruit would be the firewood that would be cut down every 33 years, and the power of the origin would be the accumulated charcoal of the furnace itself. Before Jiang Wang found new charcoal, it would not increase. Therefore, in Qi Yunshan's operating system, once the divine ability fruit was taken away, Qi Yunshan's furnace would stop operating. This was to preserve the original power and ensure that Qi Yunshan's inheritance could continue until a successor appeared. The reason why Jiang Wang did not hesitate to use Qi Yunshan's original power to suppress Yun Youeng and Do Mian was to create an impression that the overall situation was under control. He directly used the method of crushing to let the two of them see the gap between them and give up resistance. But in fact, with Qi Yunshan's remaining power, he might not be able to kill the two of them directly. The fact that Yun Youeng could still move his neck in a frenzy of jealousy was a proof. It was just that his heart was filled with jealousy and hatred, and perhaps he didn't even realize it himself. The communication with the welcoming boy was completed in the 5 prefectures sea. Not much time had passed. At the peak of Qiyun Mountain, old man Yin was still crying out in anger. His heart was filled with resentment. He hated the heavens for being unfair and hated the world for being heartless. Jiang Wang seemed to be able to empathize with his resentment after knowing that he had no control over his reincarnation and had returned empty-handed. Of course, he could always understand others, but he also had his own principles. But now, the previous incarnation of Old Man Yun, the welcoming boy of the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace, had made a request for him to die in peace and not bring his unwillingness to the next incarnation. Jiang Wang had already planned to refuse. Compassion was one thing. Facing a ruthless person like Elder Yun Yu who had sacrificed 80 years of his life in exchange for battle prowess, he would be overestimating himself and making a joke out of himself if he didn't use all means to kill him. However, the welcoming boy also said that Elder Yun was related to the opportunity to revive the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace. He really had no idea how to revive the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace. Entering a treasure mountain, but not knowing where the treasure is. Was this kind of opportunity worth a gamble? After thinking for a while, Jiang Wang looked at Old Man Yunyu. I don't know how I got the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace, but after thinking about it, he glanced at Yi Qingyu. It should have something to do with Pavilion Master Ye's arrangement. Now that he thought about it, on this trip to Qian Mountain, the opponents were very strong, but he and Yi Qingyu had gained all the benefits quite smoothly. Connecting all the abnormalities of Yi Lingxiao, Jiang Wang would never believe that Yi Lingxiao did not have some kind of arrangement. The only thing that Jiang Wang could not understand was why the one who got the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace in the end was not Yi Qingyu, but him. Yi Lingxiao did not seem to be so kind to him. Moreover, how could he not leave the benefits to his daughter? But although he could not understand, it did not prevent Jiang Wang from coming up with this analysis and using Yi Lingxiao as a tiger skin to suppress Old Man Yin Yuyu's unwillingness. He looked at Old Man Yin Yuyu condescendingly with the calmness of a victor. What makes you think that your efforts and your planning can surpass a present-age perfected person? While saying this, Jiang Wang was actually secretly reminding himself. Old Man Yin Yu did not know how many lifetimes of hard work had ended in failure. In front of present-age perfected person Yi Lingxiao, all his efforts were not worth mentioning. Yi Qingyu easily got the Cloud Seal's magical power. Yi Lingxiao's arrangements were flawless, but success was achieved when the conditions were right. Zhuang Gaoxian was also a present-age perfected person and achieved insightful truth earlier than Yi Lingxiao. If he remembered correctly, when Maplewood City was in turmoil, White Bone Path's Ouyang Lai was stirring up trouble in Yun Nation. At that time, Yi Lingxiao had not achieved insightful truth yet. And it was during the turmoil in Maplewood City that Zhuang Gaoxian recovered from his injuries and achieved breakthrough in one fell swoop. For Zhuang Gaoxian, he needed to be fully prepared. He could not be arrogant. So, old man Yun Yu had lived for 80 years. He was a young man in his early 20s, but he was so old that he looked like he had one foot in the grave. Facing Jiang Wang's words, he was not convinced. Under his withered eyelids was a pair of resentful eyes filled with blood vessels. You people don't need to work hard, struggle, or sacrifice. Just because you have a good father and a good birth, you can easily have everything? Jiang Wang did not explain to him that he was also from an ordinary background and did not have any background. He had reached where he was today step by step. He did not want to talk about that. So he only asked, "So, you are not convinced?" "Of course I'm not convinced." Old man Yun Yu roared. "What kind of trash are you? If you had the same background as me, you would not have lived until now. Why should I be convinced? You are relying on Qi Yunshan's restriction to stand and talk to me. Why should I be convinced?" He sounded like an old man and looked like an old man. But in his words, it was the unwillingness of a young man. The fate accumulated from countless lifetimes intensified his unwillingness. "Then I will give you a chance." Jiang Wang drew his sword and took the initiative to let go of Qi Yunshan's power suppression. "Fight with me alone to determine victory and defeat, to determine life and death, so that you will be convinced. I will also let you know whether it is as you said, that everyone else is trash, and only you have worked hard and fought with your life on the line." It was said to be a fair fight, but it was actually not fair. Because old man Yun Yu's connection with Starlight Holy Tower was broken, he could not establish a connection for a while, and his outer tower ability was almost crippled by half. Moreover, he first fought with Do Mian and exhausted Do Mian's battle golden body, and then he was crushed by Qi Yunshan's power. His momentum was not as strong as before. Of course, if it was really a third-level outer tower at its peak, Jiang Wang might not have made this decision. He was willing to give fairness under the condition that his ability allowed. It was not to say that he would easily seek his own death for the so-called fairness of others. Old man Yun Yu himself also understood that this was the best condition. In a situation where he was the fish on the chopping block, the other party was willing to let go of the suppression and fight with him alone. What kind of fairness could he ask for? So he immediately jumped up from the ground. "Come, Dugawudi. If you can kill me, there will be no resentment." Chapter 661. Jiang Wang suddenly had a thought when he saw Elder Yun Yu's fighting spirit rising. Could it be that the welcoming boy had been in contact with his reincarnation for a long time and said those words just to create a chance for his reincarnation to turn the tables? It was not that Jiang Wang was used to conspiracy theories, but that he had experienced too many conspiracies. Moreover, there was Jiang Yin in his body that he had to be on guard against at all times. But this thought only flashed through his mind. As the master of the cloud-top Asgard, he was sure that the welcoming boy's past figure had disappeared and would not appear again. Moreover, he had considered the matter of old man Yun Yu and was very confident about it. Jiang Wang had always been a strong-willed person, but recently, he felt that he was prone to distracting thoughts. He used his spirit as a sword to cut off all distracting thoughts. He looked at Elder Yun Yu, and then the sword flashed. He followed the sword. When the long sword was in the air, his body and mind had turned into the sword itself, isolating all distracting thoughts. This was a pure fighting stance, sincere to the heart, to the will, and to the sword. The sword was a down-and-out famous scholar. It was unrestrained but mournful. It was elegant and sharp. Elder Yun Yu was determined to fight with his life. He did not retreat, but advanced. He held the wind seal and pushed it forward. But Jiang Wang came too quickly. Before the wind and clouds could gather, they were cut apart. So he flicked his fingers and turned the mountain seal. This seal combined suppression and defense. It was very impressive. The long sword slashed across and hit the vague mountain character. The green mountain was faint, heavy, and majestic. Changshanxi was blocked by the mountain seal. Jiang Wang did not change his sword momentum. He made a gesture with his left hand, and the chains that imprisoned him emerged from the void behind Elder Yunyu. This was a legalist technique and had its own rules. Elder Yunyu scattered the mountain seal and pressed down with his palm. Invisible ripples spread out and a translucent light shield trapped the black chains. At the same time, the light shield tried to trap Jiang Wang. He had used this technique in the welcoming guest pavilion. Jiang Wang could not be trapped again. The sea of flowers spread out around Elder Cloud Traveler. Every time Elder Cloud Traveler's formless ripples moved forward, he would be blasted by the flame flowers several times. He could only regretfully stop and start a tug-of-war in midair. Jiang Wang was temporarily lost in Elder Cloud Traveler's vision. All he could see was the endless flame flowers. Suddenly looking up, Jiang Wang drew his sword and descended from the sky, his aura imposing. Facing this sword, Elder Cloud Traveler did not face it head-on. Instead, he clenched his fist in front of his chest. Countless light feathers exploded with him as the center. Jiang Wang, who had just leaped out of the sea of flame flowers, happened to be blocked by this sharp feather of light. Indeed, old man Yin Yu had a reason to be unconvinced, and he had the right to be unconvinced. His combat instincts were amazing. Even though he couldn't see through Hong Zhuang's illusion, he instinctively chose the most reliable response, making Jiang Wang's surprise attack fail. The feather of light was soft and gentle, but it possessed an extremely sharp power. It slashed at Jiang Wang's sword chi like metal clashing against metal. Jiang Wang's surprise attack was blocked, but he was still calm and composed. He reached out his hand with his sword, and the true samadhi fire had already ignited. Essence, chi, and spirit merged into one. As soon as this fire appeared, the invisible ripples that were entangled with the sea of flame flowers were instantly burned away. The true samadhi fire even burned in the opposite direction, forcing Elder Cloud Traveler to stop the related secret technique. Even Jiang Wang's own sea of flame flowers was burned away, creating a path. This showed how domineering the true samadhi fire was. And those falling light feathers collapsed one after another in front of the rapidly approaching true samadhi fire. This collapse was the best way to deal with the true samadhi fire. It not only consumed the power of the true samadhi fire, but also prevented it from spreading. Elder Cloud Traveler quickly made a decision. With a thought, he gathered all the light feathers, wanting to exhaust the power of the true samadhi fire in the shortest time possible. Just like Do Mian, once the battle golden body ran out of time, he had many ways to suppress it. However, the light feathers that filled the sky had just gathered when Jiang Wang casually flicked his hand, allowing the true samadhi fire to entangle with the light feathers. He leaped up with his sword, his body moving like lightning, drawing a neat arc in the air, avoiding the light feathers, and was already in front of Elder Cloud Traveler. This sword was as hot as the sun, flamboyant and sharp. It was the so-called young and frivolous sword. Elder Cloud Traveler hurriedly formed a seal, but how could he make it in time? He was directly pierced by the sword, nailing him to the ground. His body was too old. When the realm was suppressed, and he used all kinds of secret techniques to fight, it was not obvious. After the Starlight Sacred Tower was isolated, in a life and death battle with Jiang Wang, his reaction could not always keep up. Ever since he removed the supernatural powers, Jiang Wang often used the true samadhi fire to win, but this time, he only used it to open up the situation. After all, in a battle, there were hundreds of possibilities, and victory was the most fundamental. A true powerhouse did not believe in supernatural powers. Supernatural powers were only one of the means. No matter how strong they were, they had to obey the battle itself. On the top of Mount Qiyun, Jiang Wang pinned Elder Cloud Traveler to the ground. A strand of his long hair hung on the side of his face, but it could not hide his overly sharp appearance at this moment. The light feather, flame flower, and true samadhi fire behind him were all dissipating. Elder Cloud Traveler was vomiting blood, and Jiang Wang pressed on his sword, asking, "Do you admit defeat?" This battle should be said to have been decided long ago. Jiang Wang did not have the confidence to give up the advantage. If not for the opportunity to revive the cloud-top immortal palace, he would not have given this battle a chance. Elder Cloud Traveler stared blankly with his turbid eyes. The blood at the corner of his mouth could not be stopped, flowing along the wrinkles. It was unknown how his old body could have so much blood to flow. I don't know how you started cultivating, Jiang Wang said slowly, but for a meridian opening elixir, I went deep into the thieves' den, suffered 13 wounds, and narrowly escaped death. I think it will not be easier than you. There are many unfairness in this world. Some people are born to stand higher than you, see further than you, but pure hatred and resentment cannot solve any problems. Only hard work. The only fair thing is hard work. Hard work will not be wasted. Try hard to stand higher and farther. Jiang Wang was trying very hard to convince Elder Cloud Traveler so that he could die convinced and not have to carry his unwillingness to the next life. But Elder Cloud Traveler just shook his head and asked in return, I did not work hard enough? Jiang Wang was silent. Not to mention the reincarnation of the previous lives, just this life alone. In order to obtain the Cloud-top Immortal Palace, Elder Cloud Traveler had worked harder than everyone present, even sacrificing 80 years of his life. Now, how could he say that Elder Cloud Traveler did not work hard enough? But there were indeed some things that could not be achieved by hard work. I can see that you are not the same as those young masters and young ladies. I am convinced that I will die in your hands. At least you have given me a certain degree of fairness. Elder Cloud Traveler looked at Jiang Wang, and with the last of his strength, he glared fiercely at Jiang Wang. But fate is not fair to me. This world is not fair. Jiang Wang could feel that Elder Cloud Traveler's inner palace was collapsing one by one. The Tongtian Palace was disappearing, and the Tao energy in his body was gradually dissipating. His aura completely disappeared, and he finally died. Jiang Wang did not completely know what Elder Cloud Traveler had experienced in this life. The story was too long, and he would probably never hear it, but he would always remember the despair in Elder Cloud Traveler's eyes. For some reason, he suddenly thought of something that Xiang Qian often said, no matter how hard you work, it will be meaningless. And Zhao Ruqing. Every time Jiang Wang urged him to work hard, Elder Cloud Traveler would always say, because happy things are always related to waste. Therefore, he wasted everything, talent, and money. The reason why Jiang Wang had a good impression of Xiang Qian in the beginning was largely because he saw something similar in Xiang Qian and Zhao Ruqing. Now, Xiang Qian began to work hard. Would his efforts be of any use? When he stood in front of his master's opponent in the future, would he be able to overcome the fear in his heart and defeat his nightmare? Jiang Wang suddenly could not be so sure. P.S. Is there any meaning in working hard? Many times, I don't want to give the readers the answer. Because many times, I have the same confusion about life and the world as you. I have never grasped the truth. Therefore, I only show the problem, dissecting the real world and showing it to you. Different people have different choices. I think everyone will have their own answer. Chapter 662. Old Cloud Traveler should have died convinced. But where was the opportunity to revive the Cloud-top Immortal Palace that the receptionist had mentioned? Jiang Wang did not search Old Cloud Traveler's body immediately. Instead, he stood up, pulled out his sword, and looked at Do Mian. When he let go of Old Cloud Traveler, he also let go of Do Mian. Do Mian did not know that Qi Yunshan's power was limited. He only thought that Jiang Wang was fearless. Seeing Jiang Wang look over, he waved the saber in his hand. So, are you going to give me a fair chance to fight? Jiang Wang was about to speak when Old Cloud Traveler's body changed. On top of his head, clouds surged out and quickly condensed. As the clouds formed, Old Cloud Traveler's body shrank and dried up at a speed visible to the naked eye. Soon, there was only a skeleton covered in a straw raincoat left, smooth and clean. Jiang Wang didn't need to search the corpses anymore because he could already see everything. There seemed to be nothing left, and that little cloud was whiter, softer, and faintly glowing. It was as if it had absorbed everything from the body to nourish itself. But it did not give off a sinister feeling. It was as if it was a principle, a cycle, like the alternation of the sun and moon, the ebb and flow of the tide. After the cloud was completely formed, it seemed to be attracted by some kind of power and floated towards Jiangwang. Jiangwang also faintly felt that the cloud-top immortal palace in the 5 prefectures sea was summoning this cloud. So he did not resist. The little cloud seemed to fly slowly, but it was actually very fast and directly crashed into the 5 prefectures sea. The moment it entered the 5 prefectures sea, 300 black snakes appeared out of thin air and drilled into the little cloud, immediately turning it upside down. Jiangwang naturally would not let it enter the 5 prefectures sea without any precautions. But after a careful investigation by the spirit concealment snake, he did not find anything unusual. He withdrew the spirit concealment snake, neither stopping nor relaxing. He watched the cloud swim into the ruins of the cloud-top immortal palace. And in the spirit monument of the cloud-top immortal palace, a light spot suddenly flew out. That light spot was delicate and mysterious. It was a bit of true spirit. Jiangwang already knew that the spirit jade could nourish true spirits. However, he hadn't noticed it in the spirit steel. This bit of true spirit landed on Little Cloud and was wrapped up by Little Cloud. The cloud surged, as if it was undergoing some kind of painful gestation process. Then a white-clothed little boy stood on the cloud. Judging from his appearance, he was the welcoming boy from God knows how many years ago. Jiangwang was on guard. The welcoming boy turned around and bowed deeply to Jiangwang's soul. "Greetings, immortal master." His face was a little immature, but he looked exactly the same as the one Jiangwang had seen before. The biggest change was in his eyes. Previously, her eyes were filled with sorrow, loss, and emptiness. But now they were clear, ignorant, and filled with deep longing. It didn't seem fake. After paying his respects, Jiangwang immediately felt that he had gained some sort of control over this boy. As long as he willed it, he would be able to cause the boy and the clouds to collapse together, and the power would fall into the immortal palace on top of the clouds. It was this kind of control over life and death that made Jiangwang relax a lot. He asked tentatively, the boy was about 7 or 8 years old. Hearing this, he tilted his head and looked rather cute. "I am me," Jiangwang asked. "Elder Yunyu?" The welcoming boy. The boy shook his head. "I don't know him." He seemed to have lost his memory. The boy's current situation was different from the afterimage from before. The welcoming boy's afterimage from the past was not immediately destroyed under the influence of Qi Yunshan and the immortal palace on top of the clouds. He barely managed to communicate with Jiangwang. At this moment, it seemed that after the welcoming boy's reincarnation had died, the remaining nutrients and fate had merged with the bit of true spirit hidden deep in the spirit steel to form this boy. He was a combination of the past and the present, but also like a new life. It was normal for a bit of true spirit to not be able to carry memories. Instead, it was Master Guan Yin who started a new path of cultivation in the form of a true spirit that was truly unbelievable. "Then what's your name?" Jiangwang asked. The boy knelt down again. "Please give me a name, Immortal Master." Jiangwang said casually, "Let's call you Welcoming Boy." The boy pouted as if he was dissatisfied with Jiangwang's perfunctory way of using the name he just gave. It seemed that although he had lost his memory, he was not an idiot. "Cloud Boy." Jiangwang tried to salvage the situation. "Let's call you Cloud Boy. It's nice and easy to remember." The boy grinned. "Bai Yuntong, thanks, Immortal Master." Jiangwang waved his hand and asked casually, "How many true spirits are hidden in the spirit steel?" From Cloud Boy's conception, he suddenly wondered if there were other true spirits hidden in the spirit steel of the cloud-top immortal palace. If they could all be revived one day, would they be able to restore the glory of the cloud-top immortal palace? Of course, there was more to worry about. If so many true spirits came out one by one, would the cloud-top immortal palace still be his? Would the 5 prefectures sea still be his 5 prefectures, see? Cloud Boy shook his head. There's nothing inside. I'm the only one. Jiang Wang thought for a while and asked, what was the situation of the calamity that destroyed the Cloud Top Immortal Palace? Cloud Boy looked confused. It was like this when I woke up. For a very long time, nothing changed until you appeared, Immortal Master. So far, Jiang Wang knew 3 of these boys. One was a remnant shadow that existed in the past. One was his reincarnation, Elder Yunyu, who had a deep hatred for him. The last one was this boy in front of him who knew nothing. If one traced back to the ancient era, they were indeed the same person. Jiang Wang did not know what kind of existence this new boy was. The true spirit of the past had merged with the little cloud that rose from the corpse of his reincarnation. With the mentality that there was nothing he could do, he said, the opportunity to revive the Cloud Top Immortal Palace. Once the Cloud Top Immortal Palace revived, if there were no other hidden dangers, it would be very exciting. It was impossible for him not to care about this matter. As if some seal mechanism had been triggered, Cloud Boy blurted out, Azure Cloud Pavilion, Ethereal Hall, and Lingxiao Pavilion. Azure Cloud Pavilion, Ethereal Hall, and Lingxiao Pavilion? Jiang Wang frowned. What do you mean? Cloud Boy shook his head again. I don't know. When you asked, these names suddenly appeared in my mind. It seems to be the answer. Whether it was Cloud Boy's previous life or the reincarnation of Cloud Boy, they all had a certain understanding of the Cloud Top Immortal Palace. The earliest Cloud Boy was the one who knew the most. Other than believing him, Jiang Wang had no other choice. Does it mean that you want to subdue Azure Cloud Pavilion, Ethereal Hall, and Lingxiao Pavilion? Or get some kind of token? A legacy item? Cloud Boy did not answer. Obviously, he did not know the answer. Azure Cloud Pavilion was in Yong. It was very difficult. In theory, Lingxiao Pavilion was the most difficult, but if he only needed some kind of token, he could discuss it with Yi Qingyu. Anyway, Qi and Shan would not continue. As for Ethereal Hall, there was a chance now. Domian saw that Jiang Wang did not respond for a long time and thought that he was hesitating. He deliberately provoked him. What? You don't dare? Can you only bully Elder Yunyu, who has cut off communication with the outside pavilion? There is no chance for a fair fight. Jiang Wang shifted his attention from the 5 prefectures C and looked at Domian. I will give you a chance to buy your life. Chapter 663. A person like Domian may not be afraid of death, but he definitely did not want to die. His family had an illustrious background and a bright future ahead of them. Jiang Wang's suggestion was not a humiliation to him. His life and death were of great value to him. Death was not a momentary bravery. Death was a huge loss to the Dou family. Even in wars between countries, it was common for the losing side to pay ransom to buy back their captured nobles. Amano blade slightly twitched. Domian looked at Jiang Wang and directly said, 1 million Dao origin stones for my life. This price is very fair. I, Domian, naturally have more than this, but I can only gather this much in a short time. 1 million Dao origin stones was, of course, a considerable amount of wealth. According to the market price, he could buy 100 A-grade meridian opening pills. Domian was very good at quoting prices. In the cultivation world's currency, 100 Dao origin stones were equivalent to 110,000 Dao origin stones. 110,000 Dao origin stones were equivalent to 1 Dao origin stone. However, he did not quote 10,000 Dao origin stones. Instead, he used the cultivation world's most basic currency, Dao origin stones. With such a huge amount, he used 1 million to hit Jiang Wang's psychological expectations. Moreover, this price was very reasonable. It was the price that Domian needed to pay, but it was not to the point where he would not be able to recover. If Jiang Wang did not plan on offending Domian too much, this price was reasonable. It was very clear that Jiang Wang's intention to let Domian go already showed that he did not want to offend the Dou family too much. Since he decided to let Domian go, it would be too stupid to force Domian to become his enemy. Jiang Wang had never seen so many Dao origin stones. Of course, it was impossible for him not to be moved. However, he only shook his head. I don't want Dao origin stones. Do Mion's expression was not good. I'm already very sincere. You can ask Missy if this price is reasonable. If you want my Do family's secret manual, then you don't have to ask. Do Mion is a bit lacking, but he's not so weak as to not have any integrity. Yi Qingyu nodded slightly, indicating that Do Mion's price was indeed sincere. Do Mion, of course, would not be so short-sighted as to try to bargain when buying his life. The price that he could save was not worth the risk. The reason why Yi Qingyu expressed her stance was that she was afraid that Jiang Wang didn't understand the market. He told him that if he didn't want to kill anyone and wanted to make a profit, this price was about the limit. I respect the honor of the Do clan very much, and I also believe in your integrity. Therefore, I will definitely not ask for your Do clan's secret manual. Jiang Wang first replied in a gentle tone, then said, I'm just not that interested in Dao Yuan stones. As soon as the words left his mouth, he realized that he was being a little too arrogant, so he quickly cut to the chase. I want the ethereal palace. Do you know how much I invested in subduing the ethereal palace? Do you understand the value of such a force? Do Mion sneered. If I really give you the ethereal palace, do you dare to let me go? His meaning was clear. Ceding the ethereal palace was a huge loss to him. If he really did that, there was no way he wouldn't hate Jiang Wang, and Jiang Wang wouldn't let him go without worrying. Young Master Do, there's no need to be angry. I am seriously discussing this deal with you. I am not asking for an exorbitant price. I am very clear about the value of the ethereal palace. You are the one who isn't clear enough. Jiang Wang explained, I can tell you the truth. After this, Qiyan Mountain will be closed forever. There won't be another meeting for 33 years. This is because the cloud-top immortal palace already belongs to me, right? His expression was very sincere, so Do Mion pulled himself out of his anger and was willing to consider his words. Jiang Wang asked again, therefore, the greatest value of the ethereal palace is already gone. Does young Master Do agree? Do Mion could only nod. What Jiang Wang said was the truth. He was the one who didn't realize this in the beginning. When he was in control of the ethereal palace, the greatest value he had set his eyes on, the qualification to inherit a certain ancient inheritance, was already gone after this trip to Qiyan Mountain. Jiang Wang continued, Young Master Do, you might have invested a lot in it before, but its current value isn't that great. This has nothing to do with whether I want the ethereal palace or not. Young Master Do, you bet on the wrong treasure and cause your own loss. Am I right? Do Mion couldn't deny it, but he was still unwilling. Even so, the ethereal palace is still. One day, Jiang Wang stretched out a finger and interrupted him. I can give young Master Do one day to transfer your investment and help you recover your losses as much as possible. Of course, you shouldn't touch the ethereal palace's original assets. If we calculate this way, it's not much more than your asking price. What do you think? The value of the ethereal palace was obviously more than 1,000,000 Dao Yuan stones, even if it was already weakened to this extent. However, a fixed asset like the ethereal palace was not easy to compare to a liquid asset like 1,000,000 Dao Yuan stones. Moreover, the ethereal palace was in Cheng Nation, so Do Mion had to pay a price for operating it. If he had one day to sell it, he could recover a lot of his initial investment. Overall, he didn't lose much. After all, the ethereal palace was originally a force he had seized. For someone with a family background like his, the greatest loss was probably the wasted energy, time, and effort. Do Mion's mental defenses were retreating step by step. Do Mion hesitated for a while. Even if I'm willing to give it to you, it won't be easy for you to take over the ethereal palace. After all, it's a sect with a long history. Jiang Wang replied confidently, if you can subdue the ethereal palace, there's no reason why I can't. Behind me is the Do clan, Do Mion said calmly but proudly. Behind him is the High Heaven Pavilion. Yi Qingyu, who had been watching them negotiate, said. Do Mion glanced at Yi Qingyu with some surprise. He hadn't been sure about the relationship between Duga Wudi and Yi Qingyu. The two were familiar, but not close enough. However, when he said this, the answer seemed to be obvious. There was no need to mention Duga Wudi's strength. He had truly killed Elder Yunyu, even if Elder Yunyu wasn't in his strongest state. To have such strength at such a young age, his talent must be top-notch. Did Yi Lingxiao recruit such a young genius in her family? While thinking about the situation in the western region, he said, "Since Miss Yi said so, there shouldn't be any problems. I've worried too much." Moreover, Jiang Wang continued with a smile. "Brother Do, with your family background and character, since you've decided to make a deal, won't you cooperate with me? With your support, why should I worry about the ethereal palace not surrendering?" Do Mian was silent for a moment. So be it. Such a result was to everyone's satisfaction. Do Mian was a core disciple of a top-notch family. It wasn't that he couldn't kill him, but if he did, the trouble would not be small. Even Yi Lingxiao probably wouldn't want to be enemies with the Do family. "How can we guarantee that the deal will go on?" Jiang Wang asked. This was a guarantee to Do Mian. "I'll leave the saber with you. Return it to me after the deal." Do Mian was a decisive person. He directly handed the Amano saber to Jiang Wang and warned, "Don't try to take it away. This saber is more important than my life." "Don't worry." Jiang Wang took the Amano saber and put it directly into the storage box. He raised the sword in his hand. "I already have a weapon for a lifetime." Do Mian's words were very imposing, showing his feelings for the saber. However, Jiang Wang didn't know why, but he suddenly thought that if he had killed Do Mian, then the saber would naturally belong to him. Since Do Mian said that the saber was more important than his life, then should I ask him to buy the saber again? Chapter 664. Jiang Wang shook his head to get rid of the distracting thoughts in his mind. In the past, this kind of greedy thought would never appear. It's all Chongxian fat and Su Gaogao's fault. He thought viciously. Yi Qingyu's sound transmission sounded in his ear. "Do you really want to establish your power in Qing State?" The ethereal palace was destroyed by Zhuang Chengqian hundreds of years ago, and there's not much of its inheritance left. And in a place like Qing State, it's not a good choice. "Of course not." Jiang Wang replied in the same way. "Establishing my power in Qing State. If I don't develop well, the imperial court of Qing State will covet it. If I develop well, the imperial court of Qing State will be afraid. It's not worth it. I'm not Do Mian, who can use the flag of Chu State." Yi Qingyu nodded and stopped talking. Jiang Wang understood that she had thought of the cloud top Immortal Palace, but she had a good sense of propriety and didn't ask for secrets. Actually, he didn't intend to hide anything from Yi Qingyu, but Do Mian was present at the moment. If he accidentally exposed something, it would be bad. Therefore, he skipped this topic and said directly, "Let's go out first. Qi and Shan can't hold on much longer." In the 12th lunar month, the frosty wind whistled. The atmosphere in the Qichang Mountains was tense. The beasts in the mountains had already started hibernating, and the more intelligent and lively monsters were hiding in their nests. Because there were troops stationed on both sides of the Qichang Mountains. To a large extent, the Qichang Mountains was the border between Yong and Zhuang. The two countries were confronting each other here, and it looked like a storm was coming. Of course, the number of troops mobilized by both sides was small, and they were relatively restrained. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that the two countries didn't want to let the situation escalate. Yi Lingxiao lay lazily on a flowing cloud, turning a blind eye to the tense atmosphere in the Qichang Mountains. With his cultivation, he didn't need to worry about this kind of small-scale border friction. Even if the soldiers of Yong and Zhuang wanted to find him, it was an impossible thing. He appeared here naturally to welcome his treasure bay new. The cloud surged, and a strangely shaped face was squeezed out. It was the strange beast Acho. "Is a confrontation of this scale worth you making a trip here?" It shook its head. "Qingyu can beat them all by herself. Of course it doesn't matter." Yi Lingxiao looked at the boundless sky and said in a casual tone, "But they have deployed their troops here and are highly nervous." It was very likely that they had discovered Qi Yunshan, Qingyu who had left Qi Yunshan, and Qingyu's cloud-top Immortal Palace. The Cloud Apex Immortal Palace. It's fine if we don't know about it, but once we do, we can't guarantee that no one will have other thoughts. Tell me, if I don't personally come and see it, how can I be at ease? Achao's nostrils flared with bubbles, This possibility is too low. Yi Lingxiao interrupted it. You've never been a father. As long as there is such a possibility, I can't be at ease. I would like to. Ah Cho rolled his eyes. Furthermore, Qingyu hasn't come out yet. Don't be so sure that she has already obtained the cloud-top immortal palace. How awkward would it be if he didn't? This pavilion master's strategy determines victory from 1,000 miles away. How can I allow an ugly thing like you to question it? Yi Lingxiao sneered. In the entire Qiyanshan, there are at most 2 keys to open the immortal palace, and they are not easy to obtain. And my 7-color flag cloud carriage itself is the highest level key. It can save Qingyu a lot of time. This is the first chance of victory. Discussion is discussion, don't attack my looks. Ah Cho was very unhappy. Yi Lingxiao turned a deaf ear to it. Cloud-top immortal palace's 4 words prophecy is unintentional fate. I spent a lot of effort to find out about this clue. I don't believe that those trashy sects also know about it. Qingyu completely did not know about the cloud-top immortal palace beforehand. She originally went for the divine ability fruit. This can be said to be a prophecy. Just this point alone, she has already won. This is the second chance of victory. The third. He extended his 3rd finger and was full of confidence. Qingyu is as good-looking as me. She will definitely win. Ah Cho was so bored that its body was itching. It shook its long fur. What kind of reason is being good-looking? Yi Lingxiao looked at it sympathetically and sighed. You don't understand. Ah Cho was angry. What right do you have to say that I am not good-looking? Have you seen other stepping cloud beasts? Maybe this is called good-looking. It is because there are no other stepping cloud beasts in the present world. Yi Lingxiao said slowly. So there are no stepping cloud beasts uglier than you. Don't you think so? Then you're the ugliest, am I right? No. Ah Cho shook its head. What is wrong? Ah Cho wanted to refute, but could not argue clearly. It became angry. Anyway, it is wrong. TSK. Yi Lingxiao clicked his tongue and suddenly stood up. He kept away his mischievousness. His face became righteous, full of immortal aura. Even though Ah Cho was still angry, it angrily hid into the clouds. A kind of faint energy rippled out. Qiyanshan opened again. The 3 of them appeared in midair. When they saw the graceful Yi Lingxiao, they were all stunned. Yi Lingxiao noticed Yi Qingyu's inner palace aura. His smile could not help but become more radiant. Even the way he looked at Jiang Wang was much gentler. Father, why have you come? Yi Qingyu was the first to ask. Jiang Wang and Dou Mian both greeted each other. It was just that one called Pavilion Master Yi, the other called Spiritual Master Yi. Yi Lingxiao did not care about their situation in Qiyanshan, nodding his head in response, only smiling at his daughter. Father is not here to pick you up? Yi Qingyu sighed. I am such a big person. The way back to Lingxiao Pavilion is so short. How can I get lost? Previously, when we were training outside, you were not like this. Isn't this because of the matter of the hunters? The border armies of the 2 countries are confronting each other. I am afraid that they will disturb you. So I came to welcome you. Moreover, the time in Qiyanshan is not fixed. I have not seen you for many days. Yi Lingxiao's smile was handsome, but as he smiled, his smile disappeared, somewhat puzzled. Good daughter, where is your cloud apex immortal palace? Father. Yi Qingyu smiled even more brightly. Everyone has their own fate. Thanks to Jiang Wang's help, I have already got the cloud seal. Behind her, Jiang Wang was a little embarrassed and cupped his hands, whispering, Pavilion Master Yi, I was lucky to be recognized by the cloud apex immortal palace. Although Yi Lingxiao did not say anything on this trip to Qiyanshan, he must have made arrangements for the whole process. Otherwise, how could they see the cloud apex immortal palace so easily? Even if Jiang Wang did not react at that time, after Qiyanshan ended, he could think clearly. This trip was originally to help Yi Qingyu, but in the end he accidentally inherited the cloud apex immortal palace. The whole process was arranged by Yi Lingxiao. It could be said that he unknowingly picked up a big bargain. Dou Mian was silent on the side. He took this opportunity to observe Yi Lingxiao. Although the few of them did not speak clearly, he had already guessed the cause and effect of what had happened. He was very curious about how this unscrupulous spiritual master of the present age would react when the benefits he planned for his daughter were picked up by others. If he was furious, would he be able to save on the ransom? Well, remember to get the Tainyo sword back. Do Mian was thinking beautifully in his heart. On the other side, Yi Lingxiao just clapped his hands and said, I see. I have the intention to arrange. After all, I have the intention. He suddenly understood, but there was no anger in his expression, indescribably carefree. So this is an unintentional fate. Chapter 665. The three people present did not understand what Yi Lingxiao meant by unintentional fate. Yi Lingxiao spent a lot of effort to learn about the prophecy of the unintentional fate of the cloud-top immortal palace. That was why he deliberately led Yi Qingyu in the right direction, just like how he trained Yi Qingyu in the direction of the cloud seal since a long time ago. Although there was one magical fruit every 33 years, not everyone could eat the cloud seal. Do Mian and Yun Youing did not know about the prophecy of the unintentional fate. Even when Do Mian subdued the ethereal palace, Yun Youing's plan was all aimed at the cloud-top immortal palace. Although Yi Qingyu was unintentional, she carried out Yi Lingxiao's intention. Only Jiang Wang did not know what the cloud-top immortal palace was. Originally, he only planned to help Yi Qingyu get the magical fruit. It could be considered a real unintentional, completely fitting the prophecy. Why are you so nervous? Do you think I will snatch something from you? Yi Lingxiao looked at Jiang Wang. Since your fortune has arrived, you should enjoy it. But for you, it may not be a fortune. Of course, it may not be a fortune. Others may not understand, but Yi Lingxiao could think clearly. The cloud-top immortal palace sought an unintentional fate precisely because its own karma was too heavy, so it sought external karma. The welcoming boy who had reincarnated many times was deeply entangled with the cloud-top immortal palace. He could never inherit the cloud-top immortal palace. It was just that he did not know. His efforts would always be in vain. Yi Lingxiao was confident that he could bear the karma for his daughter, so he planned the cloud-top immortal palace for Yi Qingyu. When the owner of the cloud-top immortal palace became Jiang Wang, he had to bear the karma of the cloud-top immortal palace himself. Therefore, Yi Lingxiao said that it may not be a fortune. It may not be a fortune. Jiang Wang immediately asked alertly, Is there any hidden danger? Yi Lingxiao smiled. When the time comes, you will know whether it is a fortune or a misfortune. He was carefree. He had planned and made arrangements. But in the end, when he did not obtain the cloud-top immortal palace, he just smiled and let it go. Father, Yi Qingyu said angrily, Don't speak in riddles about such an important matter. Yi Lingxiao just shook his head. I can't say. Seeing this, Yi Qingyu knew that she would not get an answer. Ever since they were young, Yi Lingxiao had always granted her every request. However, there were very few times when he rejected her, and no matter how much she pestered him, it was useless. Since Yi Lingxiao said that he couldn't say anything, he must have his reasons. Or perhaps it would be even worse if he said it out loud. Whether it's a blessing or a curse, Jiang Wang did not let Yi Qingyu continue to help him ask. He said, Then let's wait for it to come and see what it does. Yi Lingxiao laughed. You have guts. Yi Qingyu noticed that Jiang Wang's gaze, intentionally or unintentionally, glanced at both sides of the Qichang Mountains many times. Knowing that he was inevitably concerned about the Zhuang kingdom's affairs, she took the initiative to ask, Father, you just said that the Zhuang and Yong armies are confronting each other. What's the situation? Will they fight? How can it be that easy to fight? Yi Lingxiao suddenly glared at Jiang Wang before continuing to explain to his daughter amiably. It's a dispute between hunters from both sides. They were hunting in the Qichang Mountains and got into a fight with dozens of hunters. The Yong side's hunters suffered losses, so the border army intervened. The Zhuang side was also mobilized. In the end, it's just a small matter of snatching mountain goods. Both sides are very restrained and did not send a large number of troops. However, the Zhuang border army dares to confront the Yong border army. It is indeed surprising. Zhuang Gaoxian and Du Ruhui are both very outstanding. Jiang Wang was baffled by his father's stare, but he did not dare to have any objections. However, Yi Lingxiao's praise for Zhuang Gaoxian and Du Ruhui made him feel somewhat conflicted. So that's how it is. Yi Qingyu nodded, indicating that she understood. Let's go back to Lingxiao Pavilion. Yi Lingxiao waved his sleeve and clouds gathered under his feet. At this time, he glanced at Dou Mian. Dou family's boy, do you want to visit my Lingxiao secret grounds? It was normal for a present-age, enlightened master to be able to see through his foundation. Dou Mian was not surprised and hurriedly bowed. Thank you for asking, enlightened Master Yi. However, Dou Mian still has to return to take care of some matters. Moreover, it is inconvenient for me to be covered in dirt at this moment. It will be better for me to visit again in the future. Yi Lingxiao did not mind. He was only in a good mood because his daughter had obtained the cloud-sealed divine ability with boundless potential. Otherwise, no matter how noble Dou Mian's family background was, a junior would not be worthy of his invitation. Therefore, he went to see Jiang Wang again. Jiang Wang also said, Pavilion Master Yi can return with your daughter first. Jiang Wang also has some matters to attend to. Yi Lingxiao's gaze shifted. He knew that they probably had to deal with the transaction that took place on Mount Qian. He smiled and did not say anything. The cloud travel beneath his feet carried him and Yi Qingyu and flew away. The cloud travel flew quickly and steadily. Outside the cloud, the astral winds whistled, but did not even ruffle Yi Qingyu's hair. What kind of person is Jiang Wang? Yi Lingxiao suddenly asked as the cloud travel swiftly flew. The 2 protectors and 4 elders were all present. There were also hall masters, branch masters, and other cultivators in charge of various specific affairs. Jiang Wang sat on the temple master's throne, observing the power he was about to take over. Dou Mian sat to the side and introduced, This is Dugu Wudi. He will be the temple master of the ethereal temple in the future. Since ancient times, the position has been occupied by the virtuous. I will abdicate my position and give it to the virtuous. The hall was immediately in an uproar, whispering to each other. Chapter 666. Jiang Wang could roughly imagine what these people in the ethereal palace were talking about and worried about, but he did not care, because he never had the intention to stop here and manage it well. He only wanted to take over this place to see how it would help the revival of the cloud-top immortal palace. Dou Mian kept his promise and frowned. You have to treat Hall Master Dugu like how you treat me. Do you hear me? The 2 protectors were Dou Mian's trusted aides, so they naturally had no objections. The elders looked at each other and did not speak for a while. They were probably still hesitating. Things happened so suddenly, but this was also a reasonable thing. Jiang Wang spoke at this time. It's not like how you treat Dou Mian. In the future, I will be the only hall master, and Dou Mian will be our friend. But in the end, the ethereal palace can only have my will. He looked down at everyone from the hall master's throne. Who has objections? At this time, a man with a long face and triangular eyes pushed his way to the front valiantly. His face was full of righteousness, like a righteous man about to be executed, like a brave warrior who dared to challenge the darkness. Most of the transfers of power required blood. Jiang Wang's hand was already on his sword, ready to show his power. The man with triangular eyes strode over and suddenly knelt down. His actions were so straightforward that it was amazing. His whole body was on the ground as he prostrated himself. Subordinate Zhuge Jun greets Hall Master Dugu. I am willing to lay down my head and shed my blood for the Hall Master, regardless of sacrifice, and advance courageously. The whole palace was silent. No one was a fool. Dou Mian was paving the way for Dugu Wudi, so Dugu Wudi's strength and influence were definitely not weaker than Dou Mian. The others hesitated because they were considering the future of the new Hall Master. After all, for a force to change leaders frequently, it was very unsettling. It could be said that the future was uncertain. No one was stupid enough to provoke the new Hall Master at this time, but not many could change their attitude so quickly. After all, the previous hall master, Sir Do Mian, was still sitting on the side. He supported it verbally, but who knew what he was thinking? If they surrendered too quickly, they might offend Do Mian. While most people were still weighing the pros and cons, Zhuge Jun was particularly prominent. Jiang Wang very naturally moved the hilt of his sword away and put on a smile. Quickly, please rise. Zhuge Jun respectfully bowed 3 times before he stood up. When he faced Jiang Wang, he was still bowing, which could be said to be full of flattery. Jiang Wang appeared to be very amiable. I see that you are a talented person with an extraordinary way of talking. What's your current position? Zhuge Jun cupped his fists and replied, This humble subordinate is currently the hall master of the Clear Breeze Hall under the Ethereal Palace. He knew that the new palace master might not know what the Cool Breeze Hall did. So he took the initiative to explain, the Cool Breeze Hall is mainly responsible for maintaining the dignity of the Ethereal Palace. It focuses on welcoming and sending off people who have ill intentions. It also selects people who are truly sincere and kind to protect the development of the Ethereal Palace. Jiang Wang pondered for a moment and realized that the job Zhuge Jun mentioned seemed to be gatekeeper, which was to guard the door. The Ethereal Palace was really interesting. They even combined the gatekeepers of various industries to form a single hall. No wonder he saw that there were as many as 33 halls under the Ethereal Palace. Whether it was a historical inheritance or an unforgettable glory of the past, in Jiang Wang's opinion, it was just a typical redundant position. It was no wonder that Zhuge Jun was standing at the back of the group of people from the Ethereal Palace. His status was obviously not very high. Managing all the gatekeepers, this ability was probably very difficult to come by. However, these were not important. Jiang Wang only cared about attitude now. Very good. Jiang Wang said warmly, Zhuge Jun, you are now an elder of the Ethereal Palace. He turned to ask Do Mian, I remember that there are 5 elder positions in the Ethereal Palace. Now, one of them is empty, right? Do Mian nodded. Zhuge Jun was wild with joy. He smiled until his rotten teeth were exposed. He bowed again and again. Thank you, Palace Master. Thank you, Palace Master. Palace Master really has a good eye for talent. You appoint people based on their merits. I believe that the Ethereal Palace will definitely flourish under Palace Master's leadership. Sooner or later, it will become the #1 sect in the country. Palace Master, you can't. An old man with white hair and a youthful complexion said anxiously in the hall. Jiang Wang frowned. However, he only heard him continue. Being an elder is an important position in the palace. How can it be given to someone else so easily? As a subordinate, I will obey any decision of the palace master. However, as an elder, I have no choice but to give advice. They were both defectors, but this elder was 1 level higher than Zhuge Jun. First, he confirmed Jiang Wang's position as soon as he opened his mouth. Then, he raised his doubts. While expressing his obedience, he also expressed his opinion. He looked much more dignified than Zhuge Jun. He seemed like a loyal old minister. For a moment, Jiang Wang thought that he had been in the Ethereal Palace for decades. He had both favored ministers and upright ministers. It really didn't seem like his first time here. Jiang Wang looked at him with interest. Who are you? What's your current position? The white-haired elder had a good sense of propriety and politeness. After saluting, he said reservedly, Palace Master, please don't ask. I am Wei Bufang. I am the 2nd elder of the Ethereal Palace. You are now the 1st elder, Jiang Wang said. Wei Bufang said loudly, I will naturally obey the Palace Master's orders. However, I ask the Palace Master to examine me carefully. If I do not do well one day, I ask the Palace Master to dismiss me immediately and correct the rules of the Ethereal Palace. The original 1st elder couldn't sit still anymore and was about to say something. However, Jiang Wang waved his hand. This is the end of the adjustment of my position. The rest of you will remain in your original positions. If you're dissatisfied, you can leave. He looked around with an unquestionable gaze and said, Elder Wei and Elder Zhuge, stay. The rest of you are dismissed. Managing subordinates was a very profound skill. Jiang Wang learned a little from Cheng Gongsheng and practiced it in Qingyang town. However, he didn't think he had much experience in it. As the saying goes, stay away from the scoundrels. Everyone knew this, but it was difficult to tell who was real and who was fake among the upright, loyal, sycophantic, and fortunate officials. Jiang Wang's hasty appointment and dismissal was, of course, reckless. It was very detrimental to the long-term development of the ethereal palace. However, he didn't want to develop the ethereal palace in the first place. He just wanted to quickly establish his authority and find a few obedient elders. Now, he had achieved his goal perfectly. He didn't want to watch other people's performances anymore. He didn't have the energy to judge and balance. He had to cut the Gordian knot and clear a path first. With Do Mian's endorsement as the palace master, there wouldn't be any problems for a while. No matter how dissatisfied the other cultivators of the ethereal palace were, they could only listen to the order and leave. Apart from Jiang Wang and Do Mian, there were only 2 protectors loyal to Do Mian, as well as 2 elders, Wei Buofeng and Zhuge Jun. Seeing that Jiang Wang had temporarily taken control of the situation, Do Mian stood up and said, "This matter is over. I'll return to Chu first." Jiang Wang gave him a whole day to recover his initial investment, but he only used half a day to deal with it. It was obvious that he had a firm grasp of the ethereal palace. Jiang Wang was far inferior to him in terms of managing subordinates. Hearing this, Jiang Wang didn't say anything. He directly took out the Tianyo saber and handed it back to Do Mian with both hands. "I'm returning it to its rightful owner." Do Mian was silent for a moment. He took his saber and turned to leave. The 2 protectors also followed behind him without saying a word. The power that he had worked so hard to build had changed hands so easily. In particular, Wei Buofeng and Zhuge Jun, 2 people who were loyal and devoted to their new master, were in front of him. He couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. However, in general, the deal that Qi and Shan had made this time, both sides followed the rules and didn't do anything. In the future, there might be disputes over personal feelings, but there wouldn't be any deep hatred. Elders. Seeing Do Mian leave the ethereal palace, Jiang Wang leisurely spoke. Wei Buofeng and Zhuge Jun quickly pulled themselves together and listened attentively to the new palace master's teachings. They wanted to know the new palace master's grand plans for the future of the ethereal palace, so that they could find the right position in the ethereal palace. However, they only heard him ask, "Where is the secret storehouse of our ethereal palace?" Chapter 667. Hall Master. The secret storehouse is in the Feng Hall and is guarded by hall guards. The key is your spiritual space ring. If Hall Master is interested, I can lead the way. While Wei Buofeng was still in a daze, Zhuge Jun had already taken the lead. After all, he had to maintain the image of a straightforward official, so it was inevitable for him to be reserved sometimes. Moreover, the first request of Hall Master Dugu after taking office was indeed difficult to imagine. On the other hand, Zhuge Jun was like a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water. He only wanted to make the Hall Master happy without any scruples. The spiritual space ring was the ring that represented the identity of the ethereal palace's Hall Master. Apart from the storage function, it had no other special abilities. Moreover, the storage space was not large, even smaller than an ordinary storage box. It was probably because of its long history and the significance of its own identity. Do Mian had already handed it over to him. Naturally, the ring was empty. Do Mian had already cleared out all the valuable things. Jiang Wang played with the black ring in his hand. The 2 words, ethereal, were engraved on the inside of the ring. He was very satisfied with Zhuge Jun's tactfulness, so he directly said, "Take me to see it." Until now, Jiang Wang had officially taken over the ethereal palace, but there was no response from the cloud-top immortal palace in the 5 prefectures sea. He guessed that perhaps the most important thing in the ethereal palace was some kind of token or inheritance, so he first proposed the idea of going to the secret storehouse. Zhuge Jun happily led the way in front. Jiang Wang said, "Chief Wei, come with us." Wei Buofeng, who was still upset about missing the opportunity, immediately became spirited. I will obey Hall Master's orders. In the entire ethereal palace, there was not a single outer house expert. Probably the previous Hall Master and Protector were, but they were all dealt with by Do Mian. Now, the Protector and Elder were all inner house experts. The two stronger Protectors had already left with Do Mian. In Jiang Wang's opinion, the remaining people were not as strong as Zhong Qin, who died in Qiyun Mountain. Zhuge Jun, the new Elder, was only at the peak of the soaring dragon realm. Such a sect's strength, of course, was better than an ordinary city, but compared to the Cloud Top Pavilion, which was also related to the Cloud Top Immortal Palace, the gap was too big. It was no wonder that a small country like Cheng Country had no autonomy and was easily conquered by Do Mian. Of course, a force like the Ethereal Palace had its own business value. However, it was located in a place like Changhua. For Jiang Wang, there was no room for development. That being said, it didn't stop Jiang Wang from trying to win people's hearts and tame his subordinates. Understanding the affairs of the world is all for cultivation. The reception hall was one of the three important halls of the Ethereal Palace. Aside from the conference hall, there was also the martial arts hall. This hall was used to consecrate the incense of the previous hall masters. At the same time, it also served as a secret storehouse. There is no such thing as the palace guards not recognizing the new palace master and not allowing Jiang Wang to enter. Wei Buofeng's old face was already very useful in the Ethereal Palace. Moreover, Jiang Wang was wearing a spiritual space ring, so no one dared to stop him. The three of them entered the Hall of Worship. In front of the main hall stood the memorial tablets of the Ethereal Palace's palace masters. It was raised high, solemn, and respectful. A huge incense burner was emitting green smoke in front of the memorial tablets. Jiang Wang lit a stick of incense and made a show of it. He joked, "Should we put up Do Mian's memorial tablet too?" Wei Buofeng and Zhuge Jun looked at each other. They didn't dare to say anything. They still didn't know the personality of the new palace master. They didn't know if he wanted to kill Do Mian. They didn't know if he was serious or just joking. They saw with their own eyes that Jiang Wang returned the Tianyo blade to Do Mian. That scene was enough to show that Do Mian, an internal house cultivator with remarkable powers, was weak in front of Jiang Wang. He was even forced to give up his position. However, Jiang Wang might really dare to kill Do Mian, but they didn't even dare to think about it. Jiang Wang felt bored that his new subordinates were so timid. He changed the topic. Where's the secret storehouse? This time, Wei Buofeng spoke first. It's in the back hall. Only the palace master can enter. You'll know when you enter. He reached out and pointed to the ring mark on the wall. Point the spiritual ring here, and you'll be able to open the back hall. The spiritual ring was worn on the index finger of his left hand. Jiang Wang gently rubbed it with the pad of his thumb. He had learned his lesson from being tricked into the formation by Lin Zhongren. He looked at the two elders he appointed with a faint smile. There won't be any traps inside, right? How could there be? How would I dare to be disloyal to the palace master? Zhuge Jun immediately expressed his loyalty. Although with his previous identity, he probably didn't know what was in the secret storehouse. Wei Buofeng stepped forward and bowed. If the palace master can forgive my presumptuous behavior, I'm willing to go in with the palace master and explore the way for the palace master. This old man who is used to flattering others. Zhuge Jun cursed in his heart. He blamed himself for not thinking of this way to show his loyalty and get closer to the palace master. Just listen. Taking the risk to explore the way for the palace master. How magnanimous and loyal was this? The problem was that they all knew that there was no danger in the phone hall. They had never heard of any palace master getting into trouble in the secret storehouse. This way of expressing their loyalty was a free win. There were only benefits and no harm. Jiang Wang looked at them for a while and smiled. Chief Elder's loyalty is commendable. I was just joking with you. Just wait here. I'll be back soon. Zhuge Jun was an elder he had just promoted today. Before this, no one could have guessed that he would put Wei Buofeng and Zhuge Jun in important positions. It was even more impossible for these two to have colluded beforehand. Judging from their behavior, the foam hall should be safe. And if there was any abnormal reaction from the cloud-top Immortal Palace, he didn't want these two to see it. He said he valued them, but how could he really trust these two? So Jiang Wang finally decided to go to the rear hall himself. Walking past the huge table where the tablets of the Ethereal Palace's palace masters were enshrined, Jiang Wang stretched out his left hand with a spiritual ring and inserted the ring into the mark on the wall. With a rumble, the thick gray-black wall opened. Jiang Wang stepped in, and the wall closed again. To be honest, Jiang Wang was a little disappointed throughout the whole process of entering the foam hall and entering the secret storehouse. The so-called secret storehouse of the Ethereal Palace wasn't very secretive. It was as if anyone could easily come in after killing the palace master and taking the spiritual ring. Walking into the rear hall, this feeling of disappointment was even stronger. What appeared in his field of vision was, of course, a grand and magnificent palace. There were all kinds of gorgeous brackets, faintly telling of the past wealth. Unfortunately, most of the brackets were empty. Occasionally, there were some items left, but they were all dim and didn't look precious. But this was actually something that could be expected. The Ethereal Palace was crippled by Zhuang Chengqian many years ago, and the remaining forces ran to the Cheng country to settle down. It could be said that they were at death's door. After many years of accumulation and recuperation, there was no improvement. Not long ago, they were reluctantly subdued by Douyu. Even if there were any treasures in the secret storehouse, they couldn't possibly remain. If Jiang Wang knew that Yin Youeng had also sneaked into the Ethereal Palace to plan, there was even less to be disappointed. This place was already full of holes. Jiang Wang didn't have much expectation for the treasures in the secret storehouse. What troubled him was that if there wasn't any matching token in the Ethereal Palace, or if that thing had already been lost, what would happen to his cloud-top Immortal Palace? Could it be that the clue that Bai Yuntong blurted out wasn't the real clue? Just as he thought of Bai Yuntong, there was a movement from the cloud-top Immortal Palace in the Five Residences Sea. Jiang Wang opened his mouth and spat out. Bai Yuntong, who was half the size of Finger, stepped on flowing clouds and floated out leisurely. Chapter 668. At this moment, Child of the White Clouds was extremely small. He stepped on the clouds and floated in the palace. What did you find? Jiang Wang asked. I don't know either. Child of the White Clouds was confused. He spun around like a headless fly. I feel like there is something, but I don't know what it is. Jiang Wang did not rush him. He looked at him patiently. Child of the White Cloud's current existence was a bit strange. He seemed to be a fusion of his previous life and reincarnation, but he had completely lost his memory. However, his connection with the cloud-top Immortal Palace was deeply rooted and undeniable. Now, he was equivalent to a small butler of the cloud-top Immortal Palace. Compared to searching aimlessly, he believed that Child of the White Clouds could find something. There was also a large incense burner in the secret treasury. It was exactly the same as the one in front of the altar table in the front hall. However, there was no one worshipping it. The incense inside had been extinguished long ago. There was only a thick layer of incense ash that no one cleaned up. Jiang Wang only glanced at it. He did not have the intention to look at it in detail. Child of the White Clouds floated around the palace for a while. Finally, he floated to the front of the incense burner. His expression was still blank, like that of an ignorant child. However, he instinctively moved. He pinched his fingers and gathered the clouds. In a flash, 3 incense sticks were formed. They fell into the incense burner. The incense sticks then burned. It was burning, but there was no fire. It was more like a kind of evolution. The smoke rose in spirals. It lingered and changed in midair. It was faintly discernible. Finally, it formed the appearance of a palace. It was as if some kind of mark was awakened from the passing of time. The illusory palace surrounded by smoke became clearer and clearer. It became more and more real. It evolved into reality, and the illusory became real. The dusty history was awakened. An exquisite small palace leaped out of the smoke. It was about the size of a fist. However, the pillars and cornices were all concrete. All the complicated details could be seen in front of him. Child of the White Clouds was happy. He flew to the back of the small palace. He stretched out his hands and pushed hard. His face was flushed red, and the small palace only moved a little bit away from him. Jiang Wang's heart moved. He stretched his palm to the back of the small palace. Then, he bent 2 fingers and hooked it. The small palace immediately flew over. Through some mysterious connection, it flew into the 5 prefecture seas. To be more precise, it flew into the ruins of the cloud-top immortal palace and landed in an empty corner. At the same time, the spiritual sky ring in Jiang Wang's hand flew off automatically and entered the 5 prefecture sea. This ring flew directly to the front of the small hall and automatically broke off from the middle, stretching out and turning into a long strip. When it was embedded in the small hall, people could see that it was actually a horizontal board. He wrote, "Spiritual void." Clouds surged and spiritual light flashed. It was not until this moment that this small palace was truly reborn from the ruins and integrated with the entire cloud-top immortal palace. So this was the ethereal palace, or rather, this was the real ethereal palace. The greatest inheritance that the ethereal palace had inherited for countless years was a palace in the cloud-top immortal palace, the real palace. Child White Cloud had already flown back to the 5 prefectures sea joyfully and entered the ethereal palace. Jiang Wang couldn't hold back his curiosity and directly entered the ethereal palace with his divine soul. The cloud-top immortal palace was a huge palace complex. Of course, it was now in ruins. Among the ruins, only the ethereal palace looked brand new. It was exquisite and imposing, but it didn't give off an awkward feeling. This was because it belonged here in the first place. Jiang Wang looked up at the horizontal board and stepped into the palace. To his disappointment, the ethereal palace didn't contain countless treasures, divine techniques, and secret techniques as he had imagined. The palace had an exquisite and majestic appearance, but the furnishings inside were too simple. There was almost nothing. Perhaps it was also destroyed in the catastrophe back then. However, to Jiang Wang's pleasant surprise, he could feel an extremely abundant amount of essence qi in this ethereal palace. This vitality didn't pass through him. The ethereal palace was connected to an unknown void in a way that he still couldn't understand, and it was constantly absorbing a huge amount of vitality. The rich vitality that was constantly being absorbed was wandering around the ruins, providing new energy to the ruins that had been dead for a long time. In other words, the existence of the ethereal palace was slowly restoring the cloud-top immortal palace. The most direct effect was that if Jiang Wang was willing, he could guide all this vitality to his 5 prefectures sea and increase his cultivation speed. Just by looking at Child White Cloud, lying lazily on the floor tiles with a satisfied face, one could see how nourishing the abundant vitality was. Generally, only the sex treasured lands, where formations gathered, where fortune was, would have inexhaustible vitality. After being sealed for so many years, the ethereal palace could still rely on itself to do this. It was worthy of being an immortal palace building. Only now did Jiang Wang understand why the key to the restoration of the cloud-top immortal palace was the ethereal palace, the Azure Cloud Pavilion, and the Lingxiao Pavilion. From the situation of the ethereal palace, there should be remnants of the cloud-top immortal palace in the Azure Cloud Pavilion and the Lingxiao Pavilion. They were the seeds left behind by the cloud-top immortal palace before it was destroyed, so that it could be restored one day. Jiang Wang withdrew from the ruins of the cloud-top immortal palace, and his soul flew into Tongtian Palace. Most of the time, his soul was overseeing Tongtian Palace. Firstly, this was the original residence of his soul, and secondly, it was to guard against Jiang Yan. If he was not willing to constantly watch Tongtian Palace, he believed that Jiang Yan would be more than willing to help him. Jiang Yan's voice faintly sounded at this time. Inheriting the cloud-top immortal palace may not be a good thing for you. You had best be vigilant. We only have one life, so we cannot be careless. This warning came out of the blue. When he met the mountain guardian spirit on Mount Qiyun, Jiang Yan had guided him to compete for the inheritance. After that, there had been silence. Now that he had truly obtained the inheritance of the cloud-top immortal palace, Jiang Yin had jumped out to warn him to be careful. If Jiang Yin had been an honest and loyal friend, it would have made sense. Jiang Wang asked, "Didn't you say you didn't know anything?" Jiang Yin was silent for a moment before replying, "You have no idea how dark the late antiquity era was. You know very well. Why don't you tell me about it?" It was an unbearable era. Even in the memory of the white bone god, that era was very dark. Fear. I felt the white bone god's fear of that era in his remaining emotions. Jiang Yin muttered a few words, then changed the topic. "You must be careful of the cloud-top immortal palace. Everything about it must be carefully considered, and do not accept it easily." There was no need to remind him. Jiang Wang would always consider it carefully. But in response to Jiang Yan's advice, he only replied, "I am not that kind of extremely smart person. I cannot see through schemes at a glance, nor can I easily detect traps. My reason for trusting you is very simple. As long as you do not threaten my ability, I can try to trust you." He smiled. "Cloud Child's life and death are in my hands, and there are no other living things in the cloud-top immortal palace. I don't think there is anything to be wary of." On the surface, he was talking about Cloud Child, but in fact, he was putting Jiang Yin in a checkmate. He was telling Jiang Yin that if he wanted to gain trust, he had to give up his ability to resist. Someone like Jiang Yin would obviously not agree to this. Even if he knew Jiang Wang's character and trustworthiness, he would not bet himself. After a moment of silence, he also laughed. "You are me, and I am you. You will believe me." Chapter 669. After exiting the secret storehouse, Zhuge Jun and Wei Buofeng waited patiently in the front hall. They were both smart people and knew very well who their current positions were due to. Once they lost Jiang Wang's support, the people who occupied their positions would not let them go. Jiang Wang originally wanted to sweep the secret storehouse clean, but there was not much left in the Ethereal Hall's secret storehouse. They were all mediocre magic tools, and it would be difficult to sell them for a good price. After he obtained the real Ethereal Hall, he did not care much about it. In the end, he decided to preserve a bit of his image as the Hall Master. "Lead the way to the Inheritance Hall. I want to take a look at my hall's secret techniques." Jiang Wang turned his attention to the Ethereal Hall's secret techniques. A sect that had been passed down for a long time should have some secret techniques hidden at the bottom of their chests. It was natural for the Hall Master to possess the sect's secret techniques. Wei Buofeng naturally would not refuse. From his and Zhuge Jun's point of view, the new Hall Master was a bit of a money grubber. This was not necessarily a bad thing. One would only treasure the Ethereal Hall if they treasured their possessions. From this point of view, the first thing the new Hall Master did after taking power was to understand his own possessions. This was understandable. Even if he did not understand, he would force himself to understand, or at least pretend to understand. He immediately led the way, and the group turned to the Inheritance Hall. The Inheritance Hall's security was tighter than the Foam Hall's, but it would not stop the Hall Master. Jiang Wang easily entered the secret storehouse and plundered his gains. The Ethereal Hall's secret techniques of different levels were all recorded in 3 jade slips. Disciples of different levels cultivated different levels of techniques. After using the Ethereal Hall's secret technique to break the restriction, one's divine sense would be able to detect it. Domian was able to bring Zhongqin to participate in Qi and Shan. His control of the Ethereal Hall could only be more thorough than Jiang Wang's. The Ethereal Hall's secret techniques were no longer a secret to the previous Hall Master, Domian. The essence of the techniques should have been copied in the Do clan. Jiang Wang had no reason to keep it to himself. After a rough understanding, he directly contributed all of it to the Dao development stage. No matter what, the Ethereal Palace was still a sect with a long history. Although it had been destroyed several times, the cultivation methods and secret techniques that were qualified to be preserved in the Technique Inheritance Hall were also dazzling. It was a pity that he didn't get much contribution points after using it on the Dao development platform. There were close to 100 scattered cultivation methods, and more than 1,000 Tao techniques. The foundation of his sect was only exchanged for 2,100 cultivation method points. Considering the Tao development platform's inclination towards originality, these Tao techniques should have already been contributed by others, which was why the benefits were so low. The most likely person was Do Mian. Given the size of the Great Chu Do clan, it was normal for someone to have a spot in the Great Illusionary Realm. Come to think of it, Do Mian did not lose too much in this deal. He had already squeezed the value of the Ethereal Palace dry once, and now he was using it to buy Jiang Wang's life. His previous dissatisfaction on Qian Mountain was more like a performance to prevent Jiang Wang from demanding an exorbitant price. If Jiang Wang had not found the real Ethereal Palace in the secret vault of the Feng Hall, this deal might not even be worth 1 million Dao Yuan stones. All in all, both sides had their own desires, and both sides had their own hidden goals. Jiang Wang had originally accumulated 2,300 cultivation method points in the Great Illusionary Realm, and was only 700 cultivation method points away from advancing. Now that he had this income, he immediately pushed the Tao development platform to the 3rd level and had an extra 1,200 cultivation method points. Because of the glorious effect of being the number 1 soaring dragon of the Great Void, the 3rd level of the Tao development platform had the same effect as the 4th level. As for advancing from the 3rd level to the 4th level, it already required 100,000 cultivation method points. Jiang Wang only needed to unseal it now, and that would require 30,000 cultivation method points. It was almost impossible to advance in a short period of time. He didn't know how Zhuo Guanglia had pushed the Tao development platform to such a terrifying level back then. Jiang Wang did not take a fancy to any of the cultivation methods of the Ethereal Palace. Not to mention the fact that there were no cultivation methods that directly led to the peak. There weren't even any cultivation methods that involved the immortal descent. It was as if the roots had been dug out. There were no powerful cultivation methods from the Cloud Top Immortal Palace era. However, it made sense when he thought about it. If the Ethereal Palace really had cultivation methods of that level, it would have been difficult for them to survive until now. They would have been plundered long ago. In comparison, the Tao technique system of the Ethereal Palace was more complicated. It mainly focused on the Cloud Tao, and there were indeed some outstanding ones. However, Jiang Wang did not have the heart to cultivate. Firstly, it was not good to bite off more than one could chew. He focused on the fire and wood Tao techniques, and had already formed his own combat system. Secondly, it was for the same reason that the Do clan already knew all of these Tao techniques. With the Do clan's foundation, they could easily create countless cultivation methods to break these Tao techniques. With Jiang Wang's talent and level, it was not worth it to spend too much effort on these Tao techniques. Jiang Wang had always been very clear-headed when it came to cultivation. After summarizing the benefits of the Ethereal Palace, Jiang Wang's trip could be considered to have come to a conclusion. The Ethereal Palace that existed in the ruins of the Cloud Top Immortal Palace was what he needed the most. As for the others, they were more or less incidental. There was nothing to be greedy about. With this mentality, Jiang Wang casually exchanged a few words with his 2 confidants after leaving the secret technique storehouse. Then, he suddenly looked at Wei Buofeng. Elder Wei, what do you think if I let you take control of the Ethereal Palace? Are you confident that you can manage it well? Wei Buofeng immediately panicked. He pointed to the sky and drew an oath. Heaven and earth can be my witness. I am loyal and devoted to the palace master. I have no intention of overstepping my authority. Regardless of whether it was real or not, Jiang Wang approved of this attitude. He smiled slightly and said with a gentle expression, "What I mean is, what if I let you take over the palace master's duties as the head elder? Of course, the Ethereal Palace belongs to me. However, I have more important matters to attend to. Moreover, I am engrossed in cultivation. I am afraid that I do not have much time to take care of the sect's affairs. If I want to find someone to take care of these matters, Elder Wei, you are a founding member of the palace. You understand the palace very well. Moreover, you have high expectations of the people. You're the best choice." He made his words clear. Wei Buofeng knew that this was not a test. After thinking for a while, he immediately said, "A person like you would naturally want to reach the peak of the transcendent realm. The ethereal palace is shallow water. A true dragon would not be able to stay for long." The old man flattered him first. Then, with a sincere expression, he said, "If you leave all the sect's trivial matters to me, I will do my best. I will do my best to follow the palace master's plan. I will not deviate from it. Everything will be based on the palace master's ideas. I will protect the palace master's foundation." He quickly grasped the key points. He was very clear-headed. He knew what Jiang Wang wanted and what he did not want. He gave his promise. Of course, only he knew how trustworthy he was. Jiang Wang originally wanted to make a fortune and leave like a bandit. He wanted to take away all the valuable things and leave the ethereal palace to fend for itself. However, this shabby state of the ethereal palace made him change his mind. This was because most of the ethereal palace's value could not be moved. It was not worth it to leave after making a fortune. Since he had already gotten what he wanted, Jiang Wang decided to put down a chess piece and let the ethereal palace develop on its own for a while. He wanted to see what would happen. It would be good if it succeeded. However, if it did not, he would not lose much. He would not stay in the Chung Nation for long. Therefore, he needed someone to carry out his will regarding the management of the ethereal palace. Other than Wei Buofeng and Zhuge Jun, he had no other choice in the ethereal palace. Although Zhuge Jun was promoted to the position of elder, he was only in the soaring dragon realm. He could not suppress the others. If he was promoted, he would not even know how he died. Therefore, Wei Buofeng could only be the acting palace master. Zhuge Jun, who was the first to surrender, could be used as a chess piece to supervise the balance. He could represent himself in the ethereal palace. Elder Zhuge. Jiang Wang had already made up his mind. He asked, "Are you willing to take up the position of supervisor? When I am not around, you will control the movements of the faction for me." Zhuge Jun glanced at Wei Buofeng carefully. To put it bluntly, this position was to keep Wei Buofeng in check. However, he did not have the confidence to supervise Wei Buofeng. However, although he felt guilty, he knew where his current power and status came from. Loyalty, or rather, showing as much loyalty as possible, was his only advantage and choice. "I am willing to sacrifice my life for the palace master," he replied respectfully. However, there is already an elder in charge of supervising the faction. He is the third seed elder. There were 5 elders in the ethereal palace. Since Zhong Qin died, Wei Buofeng was promoted from the second seat to the first seat. Zhuge Jun had just become an elder, and his strength was relatively weak. Naturally, he would take the last seat. Jiang Wang looked at him meaningfully. "Now you are the third seed elder." Zhuge Jun hurriedly bowed. "I am willing to die for the palace master." Jiang Wang waved his hand. "I don't care about what you say. I only care about what you do." His gaze swept past Wei Buofeng and landed on Zhuge Jun. He handed over a jade slip. "This spirit-extinguishing scroll is for you. I hope you can open the inner palace as soon as possible. Let your strength be worthy of your status, and let others have nothing to say." The spirit-extinguishing scroll was one of the 3 techniques in the Inheritance Hall that could be used directly to the outer palace. It was not something that Zhuge Jun, who was in the soaring dragon realm, could come into contact with. It could be said that he could only be considered an elder in the true sense of the word after he mastered this technique. Zhuge Jun took the spirit-extinguishing scroll. His treacherous, triangular eyes suddenly shed tears. He choked with sobs. "My parents gave birth to me, and the only one who knows me is the palace master. I, Zhuge Jun, have been looked down upon all my life. Only the palace master has treated me with sincerity. From now on, my life belongs to the palace master." Jiang Wang did not know how sincere his tears were, but he did not care. He then took out a jade belt and handed it to Wei Buofeng. "I see that Elder Wei's attire is very simple. I think you're a simple person. I wonder if this instrument is to your liking?" Naturally, Wei Buofeng was deeply grateful again. After Wei Buofeng made his promise, Jiang Wang did not immediately agree to his position. Instead, he made arrangements for Zhuge Jun first. This was a small warning to Wei Buofeng. He wanted to let him know who gave him his power and status. In the future, Zhuge Jun would be his eyes, but at the same time, he would share glory with Wei Buofeng. Not only could Wei Buofeng not resist Zhuge Jun, but he also had to support him and help Zhuge Jun establish his authority. Whether or not this arrangement would work, and whether or not it was effective, required time to test. Jiang Wang himself did not have much confidence. Wei Buofeng and Zhuge Jun were not easy to control. However, it was just a casual move. Regardless of whether it was the spirit-extinguishing scroll or the jade belt, they were all items from the ethereal palace. Jiang Wang did not care about them. He did not feel bad about using them to present Buddha. What if he could gain something? Shun country and Zhuang country were neighbors. If he could firmly control a power here, he would have a bright future. Chapter 670. Sects had many methods to control their disciples, and not all of them were controlled by emotions. One of the most important methods was the sect's cultivation method. Once a system was established, the disciples would be given out part by part according to their contributions, and it would be difficult for them to leave the sect. The more they learned, the harder it would be for them to leave. Jiang Wang directly threw out the spirit-extinguishing scroll at this time, which naturally showed a kind of generosity. I am obsessed with cultivation and will often go into seclusion. There is no suitable place in the Chang country, so I may not be there often. Jiang Wang simply explained the premise and went straight to the point. In the future, Elder Wei will be acting as the temple master, and you can make decisions on your own. I only have one request, and that is to keep a low profile and not have any thoughts of fighting for supremacy. Elder Zhuge will supervise the sect's illegal activities and deal with them if you can. If you can't, record them down and wait for me to come back. After looking at his two confidants and confirming that they had heard him clearly, Jiang Wang continued. If there is an emergency and you can't decide on your own, you can go to Sky Tower and find someone called Yi Qingyu. She will inform me. Wei Buofeng and Zhuge Jun trembled at the same time, knowing that the new temple master had revealed something. It was both support and deterrence. They immediately kowtowed to show their loyalty. Using Sky Tower's tiger skin would probably deter them for a few more days. Jiang Wang had done his best for the ethereal palace's arrangements. What happened in the future would depend more on luck. After that, he discussed the ethereal palace's development plan with Wei Buofeng and Zhuge Jun. Jiang Wang strongly advocated simplifying the system. No matter how glorious the ethereal palace used to be, there was no need to cling to history now. The first thing to do was to disband and merge the original dozens of halls until there were only 9 of them left. This would be Wei Buofeng's next long-term work. It was also a great opportunity for him to infiltrate his own power. Jiang Wang didn't mind Wei Buofeng holding power as long as he could play a role. In the next few days, he used his power as the temple master to support Wei Buofeng and Zhuge Jun's work. He gave them a lot of support so that they could adapt to their new identities in the shortest time possible. The remaining elders of the ethereal palace were all very rational. At least, with Jiang Wang in charge, they all knew their place and didn't let any bloodshed happen. As for what would happen after they left, it would depend on Wei Buofeng and Zhuge Jun's methods. The change in authority within the ethereal palace did not cause much of a stir in the outside world. They couldn't afford to offend the people of the Dou clan, and they didn't dare to offend the person who had chased the Dou clan away, even though this was just a misunderstanding. As long as the tiger skin was useful, it was fine. Not many people would look for the tiger for an explanation. After staying in the ethereal palace for 2 days, Jiang Wang announced that he was going to cultivate in seclusion and left the Cheng state. It was now the 23rd day of the 12th lunar month, year 3918 of the Taoist calendar. They had only stayed on Mount Qiyun for a day, but more than 10 days had passed in the outside world. When they left Mount Qiyun, it was the 21st of December. For some reason that even he couldn't explain, Jiang Wang stopped at the Qichang mountain range for a while before returning to High Heaven Pavilion. He noticed that the border troops of the Zhuang state had already retreated. Previously, the border troops of the Zhuang state and Yong state were confronting each other in the Qichang mountain range. Now, only the flags of the Yong state border troops could be seen in the Qichang mountain range. They were still arrogant north of the mountain. This was a result that could have been expected. Although the Zhuang state's power was gradually rising, it was still lacking compared to the Yong state. It was difficult to truly compete. However, Jiang Wang still felt somewhat uncomfortable. During the 2 days that he stayed in the ethereal palace in the Cheng state, he already knew the reason for the border conflict between the Zhuang and Yong state. Qinghe County, Shanyang City, was closer to the Qichang mountain range than Maplewood City. South of the mountain and north of the river was the sun. As the name implied, Shanyang City was south of the Qichang mountain range. Opposite the Qichang mountain range, Yong state was located in the Lingbei Prefecture's Lesan district. The Yong state was governed by prefectures and counties. Generally speaking, prefectures generally corresponded to prefectures and counties corresponded to cities. Of course, this wasn't completely accurate. The entire Lingbei Prefecture had 7 counties, and Lesan district was one of them. The process of the matter wasn't complicated. In Shanyang City, there was a pair of brothers surnamed Yang who made a living by hunting. They hunted a white-browed tiger in the Qichang mountain range. During the chase, the white-browed tiger fell into the trap of a hunter surnamed Zhang from Lesan district. When the Yang brothers were dragging the tiger back, Hunter Zhang happened to bump into them. The two parties argued over the ownership of the white-browed tiger. The two brothers beat Hunter Zhang half to death. However, before they could leave the Qichang mountain range, they were stopped by other hunters from Lesan district. During the fight, the older brother was beaten to death on the spot. The younger brother ran down the mountain and gathered a group of hunters from the same town to seek revenge. In this way, the matter escalated. Hundreds of hunters gathered in the Qichang mountain range to fight. In the end, the hunters from the Shanyang City district gained the upper hand. However, at this time, the Yong state's border troops appeared. 5 hunters from Shanyang City were killed on the spot, and more than 200 were captured. The escaped hunters returned to the city to complain, and the Zhuang state's border troops came out in full force. The result of the negotiations was that the Yong state released the captured hunters, but they were unwilling to hand over the murderers of the Shanyang City hunters. If it were in the past, the Zhuang state's border troops would have tolerated it. However, now that the power of a nation was rising, the Zhuang state's border troops could no longer be satisfied with this result. As a result, the border troops of the two countries confronted each other in the Qichang mountain range for 10 days. The Cheng state wasn't friendly to either Zhuang or Yong and was relatively neutral. Therefore, there was another version of this story. It said that Hunter Zhang from Lesan district laid an ambush for 10 days for a white-browed tiger. When the white-browed tiger finally fell into the trap, the Yang brothers from Shanyang City of the Zhuang state took advantage of it. He was so angry that he tried to reason with them, but he was beaten half to death. The other hunters from Lesan district couldn't stand by and stood up for him. This led to a series of events. In short, both sides had their reasons. At this point, it was very difficult to objectively judge who was right and who was wrong. Everyone only stood from their own point of view. In the end, strength spoke louder than words. The retreat of the Zhuang state's border troops had already explained the problem. There was still a gap between the Zhuang state and the Yong state. This gap couldn't be closed in 1 or 2 years. It was already the 23rd day of the 12th lunar month. In a few days, it would be the new year. Jiang Wang planned to go to Qi City after the New Year's Eve. He chatted with Cheng Gung Sheng a few times in the Great Illusionary Land. Recently, Cheng Gung Sheng had been working hard on his cultivation. The business was calm, and the Dushing Trading Company was doing well. Recently, there was a new trading company in Linzi City that unified many small trading companies. It was rising quickly, and its owner was very mysterious. It was said that Su Gao was jealous of someone in the offshore islands. In the end, he and his opponent were both injured. In order to support his friend, Li Longchuan left Linzi overnight. Gao's position as the future head of the family was confirmed because his biggest competitor made a fool of himself in front of the night watchman. It seemed that Yin Fu was going to be arranged in a marriage. It was probably some trivial matters like this. In short, Chung Gung-sheng said that everything was fine and that there were no problems. However, Jiang Wang could still sense the urgency in his heart. When Yung Ginzun left Jixia Academy, it would be time for them to face each other head-on, and Chung Gung-sheng would have no reason to escape. After calming down, Jiang Wang took one last look at the Qichang mountain range and was about to return to the Lingxiao pavilion. They won't fight. An old voice sounded behind him. It sounded like a casual conversation, but it made his heart tighten. Who was so close to such a dangerous distance? Jiang Wang put his hand on the hilt of his sword and turned around quietly. He saw a black-haired old man. He was wearing a white robe and was tall and thin. His face was old, but his hair was as black as ink. Jiang Wang had never seen him face to face before, but he remembered him deeply. Du Ruhui. Chapter 671. Seeing that Jiang Wang had turned around, Du Ruhui was very calm. He continued to speak. Zhuang and Yong have always had a relationship and are of the same breath and branch. Occasionally, there will be some small friction, but it will not lead to a war. What do you think? Jiang Wang had imagined countless times how he would look when he saw Du Ruhui, but there was never a situation like this. Meeting him so unprepared, so close, and so sudden. He tried his best to calm himself down and suppress the stormy waves in his heart. He asked, "Are you asking me?" Du Ruhui smiled. His smile was very warm, as if he were an elder in a family. "Besides you and me, is there anyone else here? If you're asking me, I don't know." Jiang Wang shook his head. "I don't care whether Zhuang and Yong will fight or not. In comparison, I'm more concerned about the demonic beasts in Qichang Mountain Range and the Meridian Opening Pill." "Is that so?" Du Ruhui looked at him. "I see that your cultivation is not bad, and you've been here for a long time. I thought you were very concerned about the conflict between Zhuang and Yong. You must be joking. I'm just looking around." Du Ruhui chatted for a bit, then suddenly said, "Who are you representing to observe the situation here?" Jiang Wang's face was bitter. "Old man, I really don't know what you want to ask. You see, I'm so young. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that I'm a child. Who can I represent? Then I'll change the question." Du Ruhui remained unmoved and continued to stare at him. "Little brother, where are you from?" Jiang Wang knew this was the key to this question. Don't be fooled by this old man's warm and gentle demeanor. Once he judged someone to be a threat to Zhuang, he would show no mercy. Sky Tower. Jiang Wang was a man of few words. In front of someone like Du Ruhui, in a situation where he had no choice but to respond, the less he said, the less mistakes he would make. Du Ruhui slightly raised his head, seeming to have thought of something. Jiang Wang noticed that Du Ruhui's hands, which were behind his back, had loosened. Perhaps he had purposely drawn his attention to this point. "Qi Yinshan?" Du Ruhui asked. Many people probably knew about Mount Qiyun, but not many knew what was inside Mount Qiyun. In front of an existence like Du Ruhui, Qi Yunshan's secret relationship with High Heaven Pavilion shouldn't be a secret. Jiang Wang thought for a moment and said seriously, "It is indeed related to this." His eyes were clear, gentle, and firm. He looked very trustworthy. Not even the slightest bit of hatred was revealed, as if Du Ruhui was really a stranger to him. Du Ruhui smiled faintly. "Speaking of which, this old man is really curious. What is the secret that Yi Lingxiao has been guarding so tightly all these years?" "I'm afraid it's not convenient for me to say." Jiang Wang bowed and said, "Please forgive me. It doesn't matter." Keeping secrets is an excellent trait. Du Ruhui was very magnanimous. This old master and Yi Lingxiao haven't seen each other for many years. It just so happens that we're on our way to High Heaven Pavilion. How about we go together? Jiang Wang knew that Du Ruhui wanted to see if he really came from High Heaven Pavilion. Although he said he was going to accompany him, he was actually going to escort him. If he was proven to have nothing to do with High Heaven Pavilion, then perhaps he would be buried in the vast green mountains below at any time. His heart was already nervous to the extreme, but his face was still calm. I don't dare to refuse an elder's order. You seem a little nervous? Du Ruhui asked. Jiang Wang smiled bitterly. In front of a powerhouse like you, it's hard for me not to be nervous. Du Ruhui was noncommittal. I haven't been to High Heaven Pavilion for a long time. Little brother, please lead the way. Jiang Wang breathed a sigh of relief and turned around to fly away. In front of Du Ruhui, he absolutely had no chance to escape. There was no room for resistance. He was now only glad that he didn't casually mention a place. After all, coming from High Heaven Pavilion wasn't a lie. Flying back to Yin Country from Chichang Mountain Range, Du Ruhui occasionally said a few words, but they were not important. He was like an ordinary lonely old man, casually looking for someone to chat with. Jiang Wang didn't dare to judge, and he didn't dare to be careless. He firmly grasped the principle of cherishing words like gold. If he didn't have to say too much, he wouldn't say too much. If he could be vague, he would be vague. In this way, he struggled to reach snow-embracing mountain. The capital of Yin Country, the beautiful Yin City, was located on this mountain. Probably because of Du Ruhui. Before they even got close, they saw the sea of clouds surging. Yi Lingxiao stepped out on a cloud. He glanced at Jiang Wang and then looked at Du Ruhui. The dignified state minister of Zhuang Ting has the time to visit a small sect? Du Ruhui smiled and said, I heard that High Heaven Pavilion's master is able to break through the truth, so I came to congratulate you. Both sides were very polite and praised each other. If you really came for this matter, your news is really not up to date. Yi Lingxiao smiled. Zhuang Country is small and weak. Naturally, it's not as well informed as High Heaven Pavilion. Du Ruhui glanced at Jiang Wang and said with a hidden meaning, You all know the state affairs of Zhuang Country like the back of your hand. Oh, what do you mean? Other than joy, there's no other meaning. Du Ruhui was full of smiles. Your sect sent such a talented disciple to pay attention to the state affairs of Zhuang Country. It really makes me feel honored. Yi Lingxiao glanced at Jiang Wang and roughly understood what was going on. However, he didn't expose him. He only said, What's wrong? Are people from High Heaven Pavilion not allowed to pass through Zhuang Country? Of course not. Du Ruhui shook his head. With Yi Lingxiao's words, he didn't need to treat Jiang Wang as a thief anymore. He also didn't need to offend Yi Lingxiao over this. He knew Yi Lingxiao's temper and directly skipped over this matter. He sighed and said, We haven't seen each other for many years. In the end, you and I are still unfamiliar with each other. Yi Lingxiao sneered. You were busy eliminating the demons and defending Taoism, but you didn't forget to guide Ouyang Lai to interfere with my breakthrough. Elder Du, how can we not be unfamiliar with each other? Du Ruhui sighed. If I said that I didn't know anything, I think you wouldn't believe me. For some things, it's not about willingness, but whether or not you can. Yi Lingxiao looked at him. Do you still remember this? There seemed to be a story between these two big figures. Jiang Wang pursed his lips tightly and calmly watched from the side without saying a word. Du Ruhui was silent for a moment. No matter what, I'm really happy for you that you can see through the truth. Yi Lingxiao saw that Du Ruhui was obviously a golden body jade essence, an indestructible body, but he looked somewhat old. He restrained the sharpness in his temperament and said, Zhuanggua has delayed you. The two of them were both dressed in white. Du Ruhui was in a white robe, while Yi Lingxiao was in a white robe. One of them was old and weary, while the other was handsome and ethereal. But Du Ruhui smiled calmly. You're not a fish. How can you know the happiness of a fish? Yi Lingxiao flicked his finger. Out of nowhere, a fish jumped out and flew high into the sky, landing straight in front of him. The fish scales fell off and its internal organs disappeared. He turned his head to Jiang Wang and said, Can't you be a little more observant? Only then did Jiang Wang come out of the state of watching a play and realize that he was also a part of the play. He discreetly flicked out a ball of ordinary flame and carefully roasted the fish that had been peeled and cleaned. Yi Lingxiao looked at Du Ruhui again, and his smile was much more sincere. I'm not this fish, but I think it's definitely not happy at the moment. What do you think? Du Ruhui was not annoyed by Yi Lingxiao's mischievous provocation. He only said, I enjoy myself. Chapter 672. Jiang Wang couldn't get a word in as the two big shots were talking in the sky. Fortunately, Yi Lingxiao helped him cover up, so he didn't expose himself too much. Therefore, he wanted to show off his skills in front of Yi Lingxiao to repay him. He served the fish very carefully. Not long after, the fish was already burnt. It was very quiet in the clouds. The burnt smell drifted in the air like a fish swimming around the noses of several transcendent stage cultivators. It was a bit naughty and provocative. Yi Lingxiao was expressionless. If you have something to do, go back to the pavilion first. He raised his eyebrows and added, Take your grilled fish with you. Du Ruhui laughed. Pavilion Master Yi, the fish may not be happy, but I guess you're not happy either. After losing face, Jiang Wang could only grab the black grilled fish and leave dejectedly. Everything in Cloud City was as usual. Most people didn't know that a strong person had come to visit. The world of cultivators and the world of ordinary people were often separated. Du Ruhui was the Prime Minister of Zhuang State and had to deal with a lot of affairs every day. Yi Lingxiao, as the Pavilion Master of Cloud Tower, was also the backer of the entire Yun Kingdom. Some of the conversations between the two were inconvenient for Jiang Wang to hear. He was also very tactful. The two old acquaintances didn't talk for too long. After they had their own positions, the friendship they might have had could only fade. Jiang Wang waited in the sky above Cloud City for a while. Then, he saw Yi Lingxiao floating over. He hurried over to thank him. Pavilion Master, thank you for covering up for me just now. Yi Lingxiao didn't speak. He just looked at him quietly for a while. Jiang Wang was a bit nervous. Du Ruhui thought that I sent you to Zhuang State to investigate the situation, and that Cloud Tower had some ideas about the situation in the western region. Yi Lingxiao stood with his hands behind his back. I thought you were a smart person. He was asking why Jiang Wang was so unwise to expose himself in Zhuang State when his strength was far from enough. Jiang Wang didn't explain. He just said, I'm sorry for the trouble I caused to Cloud Tower. Yi Lingxiao waved his hand. There's no need to coax you with false words and make you feel grateful. It's no trouble. Du Ruhui wouldn't go so far as to provoke me over such a trivial matter. Jiang Wang wanted to know the real purpose of Du Ruhui's visit to Yi Lingxiao. However, Yi Lingxiao paused and said, However, you should know that some things can't be undone. For once, he deliberated over his words. There are some things that may not be possible. Jiang Wang understood what he was talking about and replied softly. There has to be an explanation. The others are all gone. I can't wait for an to ask for it. If he had been filled with righteous indignation, Yi Lingxiao would have thought that it would be easier to deal with him. It was precisely because his reply was so gentle and his voice so calm that Yi Lingxiao knew that his decision could not be changed. Looking down at the majestic Cloud City and the tall mountain peak, Yi Lingxiao said, When the founder of my sect climbed this mountain, he sighed that holding the floating clouds is like holding the frost and snow. Therefore, it was named Snow Embracing Mountain. Jiang Wang didn't know why he suddenly mentioned this, but he could only agree and praise. You have both the air of immortality and the air of generosity. The establishment of the Cloud Country was not the intention of High Heaven Pavilion. A group of ordinary people who had nowhere to go depended on High Heaven Pavilion to live. They gathered together and gradually formed a scale. When there were many people, they needed to be organized and formed a system. Yi Lingxiao said slowly. However, High Heaven Pavilion has no intention of contending for hegemony. What we seek is to climb high and look far to hold the frost and snow. Only cultivation. Although we are not afraid of trouble, we are not willing to provoke trouble. After all, the path of cultivation is long, and those entanglements of karma will affect our ascension. After a moment of silence, Jiang Wang nodded. I can completely understand Pavilion Master's difficulties and considerations. I shouldn't have bothered you for so long. I won't cause trouble for High Heaven Pavilion. I will take it away and settle her in Qi. That's not necessary. Yi Lingxiao shook his head. Jiang, and is a direct disciple of High Heaven Pavilion. I also like her very much and have no reason to expel her. However, seeing Du Ruhui come today as the master of High Heaven Pavilion, I have to remind you that if you can't let go of your hatred, High Heaven Pavilion will not stand up for you if you encounter any trouble in the future. This was directly telling Jiang Wang not to rely on the relationship between Jiang and Yi Qingyu. High Heaven Pavilion was not something he could rely on. Jiang Wang looked back at his eyes and said seriously, Pavilion Master Yi, please rest assured. I have never thought of asking High Heaven Pavilion to stand up for me. The road ahead is a towering mountain peak or a bottomless abyss. My own road, I will walk it. I made my own decision. I will bear it. Meeting Du Ruhui this time was really unexpected. He asked me where I came from. This kind of question can be confirmed at any time. I can't lie in front of him. I promise you. Jiang Wan's expression was very serious. There will not be a next time. No matter what danger I encounter in the future, even if I die on the spot, I will not face High Heaven Pavilion. I'm not saying this out of anger or resentment. I'm just trying to understand your painstaking efforts as the master of High Heaven Pavilion. Thank you for taking care of Jiangyan, and I solemnly promise you. Yi Lingxiao looked at him. Indeed, he didn't see the slightest bit of resentment in this youth's eyes, not even dissatisfaction. This youth was indeed very clear-headed. He knew that there was no such thing as natural support in the world, and he was indeed very proud. Very good. Although there are few men, they are full of pride. Yi Lingxiao nodded gently. I'm thinking for High Heaven Pavilion. I don't need you to understand. But considering that you are Jiangyan's brother and Qingyu's friend, I'll explain it to you. Jiang Wang replied, I can completely understand Pavilion Master's good intentions. It's best if you can understand, but it doesn't matter if you don't. Yi Lingxiao smiled slightly. Let's go back to the pavilion to accompany Jiang didn't seem to need company. When Jiang Wang found her, she was riding on a snow crane, dancing with joy. The snow crane rolled up and down. She was very happy. Senior Sister Wang and Senior Sister Wang were beside her to protect her, afraid that she would fall. Mo Yang and that square-faced senior brother Fong had their backs turned. They hid in a corner and were busy doing something. Jiang Wang walked over and saw the two of them deftly cutting open the stomach of a fat crane. They were even discussing from time to time. Jiangyan lost the snow crane cavalry. Didn't we use this reason once? No? Didn't we say that Jiangyan scared the snow crane away with firecrackers last time? Is that so? Jiangyan has contributed greatly to our sect. This time, we'll give her a share of the crane leg. Jiang Wang. Cough. Mo Liang and senior brother Fong hurriedly turned around. Before Mo Liang turned around, he even formed a seal and got into a battle stance. He had a guilty conscience. Brother. Mo Liang's frightened face instantly turned into pleasant surprise. He called him brother very intimately and naturally. You're back. We were just about to look for you. A snow crane accidentally fell and died. We were cleaning it up. It tastes very good. You have to try it. Senior brother Fong's reaction was relatively slow. He only twitched the corner of his mouth stiffly and nodded in agreement. Then I'll thank you in advance. Jiang Wang passed the grilled fish over. On my way back, I happened to encounter a fish that accidentally drowned. It's already grilled. I'll also invite you to try it. Mo Liang looked at the black grilled fish. The corner of his eyes twitched. He received it with a bright smile. Thank you, brother. Our junior brother Xie Ruishuan loves to eat fish the most. He stuffed the grilled fish into senior brother Fong's hands with a smile. In front of Jiang Wang, senior brother Fong, whose real name was Xie Ruishuan, could only accept the grilled fish. He continued to smile awkwardly and nodded. Yes, yes. Ouch. Jiangyan heard the commotion and scrambled down the snow crane's back. She ran over with her short legs. Brother, you're back. Jiang Wang smiled kindly and looked at her very gently. Did you practice writing today? I was just about to go. Jiang, and then jumped in front of Jiang Wang lightly and hugged his hand. She looked at him pitifully. Brother, I was just about to go. Chapter 673. In the small building where Pavilion Master Ling Xiao lived alone, the elegant Yi Ling Xiao held a brush in his hand and was carefully painting. Yi Qingyu was casually flipping through an ancient book in front of the bookshelf. Father, she seemed to ask casually, what did Duruhui say to you when he came over that day? Yi Ling Xiao stopped painting and turned to look at his daughter with a faint smile. Do you want to know? Or does that guy want to know? Yi Qingyu wrinkled her nose. What do you mean by that guy? He has a name. Yes. His surname is Jiang, and his name is Anan's brother. Yi Ling Xiao rolled his eyes. That's his position in my heart. He didn't come to me. I was just curious. Yi Qingyu stuffed the book back and took out another one. She said with dissatisfaction, My pavilion master, how did fellow Taoist Jiang offend you? Yi Ling Xiao glared. What? The cloud-top immortal palace I prepared for you was taken by him. It's good enough that I didn't make trouble for him. Do I have to spoil him? Okay. Yi Qingyu casually flipped through a few pages and said with disdain, We didn't care much. Don't think I don't know. That's the cloud-top immortal palace. One of the 9 great immortal palaces in the near ancient era. Why didn't I care? I spent so much effort on you, you stupid girl. Yi Ling Xiao was so anxious that he didn't have the demeanor of a Taoist. Uncle Cho told me everything. Yi Qingyu rolled her eyes at him. There's only one magical power fruit every 33 years, but Cloud Seal needs the right time, place, and people. You value Cloud Seal the most. The Cloud-top Immortal Palace has little luck and heavy karma. Yi Ling Xiao gritted his teeth. This ugly thing can't hide anything. Also, Yi Qingyu smiled. Her smile was of the same origin as Yi Ling Xiao's, extremely beautiful. What kind of person is my father? He has already walked his own path. Why would he care about that outdated inheritance? Not to mention that the Cloud-top Immortal Palace is now a ruin. Even if it was at its peak, you wouldn't care about it. Yi Ling Xiao immediately beamed with joy. Don't say that. I'll still take a look or two. Of course, I want to soar above the 9 heavens. Naturally, I won't walk the path of the predecessors. This old child was too easy to coax. Yi Qingyu looked at him in amusement. Father, what did Du Ruhui say to you privately? Yi Ling Xiao immediately stopped smiling. No comment. Yi Qingyu immediately stopped laughing and flipped the pages in annoyance. Forget it if you don't want to say it. Hey, be gentler. Yi Ling Xiao couldn't take it anymore. You have the only copy in your hand. It's very rare. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Yi Qingyu did not say a word, fiercely flipping through the book. Yi Ling Xiao let out a long sigh and said helplessly, Actually, he didn't say anything. Previously, the Zhuang Kingdom had won the war with the Mo Kingdom. Furthermore, they had displayed extraordinary talent in the four-way talks held in Buyao City. Originally, the country was flourishing and had gained quite a bit of prestige. However, in the confrontation with the Yong Kingdom a few days ago, Du Ruhui couldn't sit still and came to test the reaction of the surrounding powers. That's all. Yi Qingyu was somewhat suspicious. In any case, that's what he expressed to me. Yi Ling Xiao was somewhat dissatisfied. Do you think your father would lie to you? Yi Qingyu giggled. Of course he wouldn't. She placed the precious ancient book back on the bookshelf. You take your time drawing. I'm leaving. Wait. Yi Ling Xiao berated. What kind of place do you think this is? You think you can come and go as you please? Yi Qingyu was rather helpless, but she still cooperated and got into the act. She assumed a posture. Oomph. This heroine is determined to leave today. Let's see who can stop me. This was the daily drama of the father and daughter pair. Yi Ling Xiao raised his hand and raised his eyebrows. I advise you to keep your distance from that person. He has the appearance of an early death. This was a metaphor for the drama. Yi Qingyu withdrew her posture and tilted her head. I've also learned some physiognomy. Why can't I tell? Yi Ling Xiao suddenly felt bored and turned his head away. Your cultivation is too shallow. All right. Yiqingyu only felt that her father was starting to talk nonsense again. She blinked her eyes indifferently and stepped out of the building. She turned her hand and closed the door behind her. Allow me to retreat and cultivate properly. I'll come back to talk to you when my cultivation is deeper. His daughter left, and the small building regained its silence. When she was very young, this place was usually extremely lively. But as his daughter grew up and became more beautiful, there were less and less topics to talk about with her father. This place became quiet. Yi Lingxiao stood alone for a while. He looked at the drawing that he had only sketched a few strokes and was lost in thought. After a long time, he finally put down the brush in his hand and did not continue. There was only a sigh. There are infinite painters in the world, but I can't draw a piece of sadness. Some people were happy, while others were sad. Jiang Wang returned from the sword discourse arena. Under the situation where he did not use his supernatural powers, he had won another round. Although he still had not squeezed into the top 100 of the palace level in the great illusionary world, he had already accumulated a lot of merit points and could deduce some Taoist techniques. The newly created 3-level Taoist platform was waiting for him to open it. The blessed land was still the same as before. There were no changes due to the continuous drop in the ranking. He missed the challenge day of the blessed land at Qiyun Mountain. Now his blessed land had dropped to the 39th place in the East Baiyuan. His monthly merit points only amounted to a mere 430 merit points. After the 36th place in the blessed land, every time he dropped a rank, he would only lose 10 merit points per month. This number could be said to be negligible. Jiang Wang increasingly felt that the monthly merit points in the blessed land were only a small part. He had not seen the real benefits yet. He was now in the inner mansion level. The 5th grade sword discourse arena, used in the Milky Way sword discourse arena, required 120 merit points to activate. He had already won 240 merit points in one battle. What was the use of the little merit points in the blessed land every month? It was not worth the fights of those strong cultivators. Of course, the prerequisite to knowing the truth was victory. Until now, he had not won any of the blessed land challenges. He could only keep this question in his heart. He placed the Rotten Wood mantra on the Taoist platform. With the blessing of the Great Void's number 1 soaring dragon, the Taoist platform's effect was now 4 levels high. The derivation of the cultivation technique was naturally more perfect than before. After exhausting all his merit points, he finally derived the Rotten Wood mantra from the A-grade low grade to the A-grade mid-grade. He had already entered the threshold of cultivation for inner mansion cultivators. It was of the same level as the 8-note flame sparrow and the flame sparrow holding flower. The more he studied this Tao technique, the more he could sense its potential. This was a very rare inspiration. It was limited to the talent of the Wangjiang Tao Academy's dean and could not be pushed to a higher level. Jiang Wang could not rely on himself. This was because he did not have the inspiration to nurture the Rottenwood mantra. He also lacked the vision to stand at a higher level. At this time, the superiority of the Taoist platform was reflected. The greatness of the Great Void illusory land might have to wait until it was truly popularized before it could be valued by people. Jiang Wang did not think too much. After thoroughly familiarizing himself with the A-grade, mid-grade Rottenwood mantra, he engraved it into the first inner mansion. This was his first instant cast Tao technique at the inner mansion level. It was very meaningful to him. P.S. There are infinite painters in the world, but no one can draw a piece of sadness. Evening gazing at Jinling, Tanggao Chan. Chapter 674. The Yong Kingdom was a long-established power. In its early years, it had once gone north to contend with the Jing Kingdom for supremacy. Unfortunately, it ultimately failed and had no choice but to retreat. The mighty ruler who had led the Yong Kingdom to its peak had unfortunately died in battle in the Jing Kingdom, directly leading to the decline of the Yong Kingdom. The mighty ruler of the Yong Kingdom had been in the prime of his life when he personally led the expedition. Although he had established a crown prince in advance, he had not relinquished too much power. As a result, something even worse had happened. He had died on the battlefield, while the crown prince had died in the Eastern Palace. Soon after, the struggle for the throne between the three princes occurred. The entire country had been divided, with the three princes each occupying a territory and attacking each other. At that time, the great general of the southern border expansion, Zhuang Changxian, had seized the opportunity to divide the land and establish the Zhuang Kingdom in the Qichang Mountains. The Yong Kingdom should have encompassed the Qichang Mountains and the Zhuang Kingdom's 3,000 square kilometers of land. If it had had enough time to unify the western and northwestern regions, it might have been possible to once again contend with the world's great powers. Unfortunately, due to the struggle for the throne and Zhuang Chengqian's betrayal, its ambitions were destroyed. Later, the rebellion of the three princes was quelled, and the Yong Kingdom was once again unified. However, due to the terrible international situation, it had been unable to reclaim the Zhuang Kingdom. Time had passed, and the current Yong Kingdom was no longer the same as before. However, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse, and it still retained a certain amount of prestige in the western and northwestern regions. Now that the Zhuang Kingdom had been established for more than 300 years, it had long since been stabilized and difficult to change. Other than the occasional provocation on the border, the Yong Kingdom could only watch helplessly most of the time. After all, regardless of whether it was the Jing Kingdom, which the Zhuang Kingdom had latched onto from afar, or the Jing Kingdom, which had interrupted the Yong Kingdom's supremacy, neither wished to see the emergence of a hegemon-level Yong. Lingbei Prefecture, Songlin County, a small mountain with beautiful scenery. A group of disciples from the Green Flame Sword sect were resting here. The eldest disciple, Situ Jian, was currently narrating the secrets of the Jianghu. His eloquence was excellent, and his narration was brilliant and complicated. Do you know what demons are? His junior brothers and sisters listened with rapt attention. Situ Jian's gaze swept over his prettiest junior sister, saw her pale complexion and expression of both fear and anticipation. Look at the word demon. Situ Jian drew his sword and carved words in the world. His movements were elegant and smooth, and his voice was low and deep. It's the ghost cloak, a ghost that takes human life. And as for the 9 great demons, Situ Jian explained for a while before suddenly asking, "Do you know who the 9th human demon is?" "I know," little junior sister said timidly. "Heart-swallowing demonic bear, one was killed by Zhu Wei." Situ Jian frowned. As a young cultivator, he naturally didn't have a good impression of Zhu Weiwa, whose name had even spread to the Tianjiao of Yong. However, he wasn't unconvinced, and it wasn't his place to be unconvinced. "What is Xiongwen?" Situ Jian scoffed. "He doesn't live up to his name." Little junior sister twisted the corner of her clothes. "But I heard that he eats people's hearts." When the words "eat people's hearts" came out, the junior brothers and sisters who had never seen blood were all a little nervous. He wasn't evil enough, nor was he strong enough. There's nothing to say about him dying under Zhu Wei's spear. Situ Jian gave a perfunctory reply before changing the topic. "The 9th human demon I'm talking about isn't him, but the heart demon of hatred." Heart demon of hatred? One of the junior brothers couldn't help but ask, "Does he also eat people's hearts?" Situ Jian glared at him in dissatisfaction. "You don't know anything. I'm the grand senior brother of the Green Flame Sword sect. How can I have the time to answer a stinky man's question? Just wait for the junior sisters to ask." However, since the question had already been asked, the junior sisters cast inquiring gazes over. Although it was right to favor one and discriminate against the other, it wasn't good to be too obvious. Situ Jian reluctantly replied, "He doesn't eat people's hearts." But Situ Jian changed the topic. "He will first make people answer a question, then dig out their hearts to determine whether the answer is true or false. In a sense, he's much more vicious than Xiongwen. Because Xiongwen likes to eat people's hearts, it's reasonable to kill and dig out hearts. However, the heart demon of hatred only wants to torture people." The junior brothers and sisters all sucked in a breath of cold air, trembling in fear of such a terrifying existence. Situ Jian moved closer to little junior sister without leaving a trace. He was very satisfied that his junior brothers and sisters were trembling in fear because they hadn't seen the world. This was the effect he wanted. However, from the corner of his eyes, he suddenly saw that one person hadn't moved. Who was so daring? Situ Jian casually looked over, but he was shocked. This was because he didn't recognize this person at all. A person had suddenly appeared in the middle of the junior brothers and sisters listening to the story, but he hadn't noticed at all. Moreover, before he saw this person, none of the trembling junior brothers and sisters had noticed. "Who are you?" Situ Jian suddenly gripped his sword tightly and asked in a stern voice. "Don't be nervous. Continue," the person said. "I'm asking you who you are." Situ Jian yelled. "How could I not be nervous?" Sword chi burst forth from his sword, and the sword techniques passed down in his sect started to activate. However, this didn't give him any confidence at all. His junior brothers and sisters all stood behind him. Although they were nervous and confused, they were still full of vigor. They drew their swords and faced him. However, this still didn't give him any courage. He tried his best to look at that person's face. That person's face was clearly exposed, but he always ignored all other details and only saw those blood-red eyes. "Who am I?" The person with the blood-red eyes seemed to be asking himself. However, he quickly found the answer. He revealed 8 neat rows of teeth and smiled. "Weren't you all talking about me just now?" Clang! This smile had a ferocious and bloodthirsty feel to it. Someone behind him was so frightened that his sword dropped from his hand and fell to the ground. "Don't be nervous. Don't be nervous. It's nothing serious." The hateful heart demon seemed to be comforting them, but as he slowly stood up, everyone's fear reached a critical point. "Die, human demon." A junior brother stabbed forward with his sword. The sword stabbed forward like a blazing blue flame. The tip of the sword was the tip of the flame. Situ Jian didn't know why, but his heart seemed to be empty at this moment, free from the fear and nervousness. He actually had the leisure to judge his junior brother's sword technique. This sword technique was called sending off tenli. His master said that when it was practiced to a high level, the blue flame would burn tenli. His junior brother's sword technique was very well done, but the angle was not practiced enough. If it was him, Situ Jian's mind couldn't help but wander. He saw a hand suddenly appear in his field of vision and crush that junior brother's head. Red and white splattered everywhere. Some of them even splashed on his face. They were warm. Then, he seemed to hear screams. However, they weren't very clear. He wasn't sure if those cute junior sisters had screamed, and he wasn't sure if those brave junior brothers had cursed. However, there was one sentence that he would probably never forget. "I want to ask you all a question." The person with the blood-red eyes seemed to ask, "Am I a piece of trash?" Situ Jian was very confused. That should be the hateful heart demon's question. However, who was he asking? Chapter 675. Today was the last day of the 3918th year of the Taoist calendar, which was also the day of the new year. The old year was gone, and a new year was born. It was still early in the morning, but the entire Cloud City was already decorated with lanterns and colored banners. Although Lingxiao Pavilion was a transcendent sect, it couldn't avoid celebration. The secret area of Lingxiao Pavilion was decorated in red. It was less celestial and more human. "Brother, what are you thinking about?" Jiang Ainin waved her little hand in front of her eyes. "It's your turn." These days, Jiang Wang didn't go anywhere. When he wasn't cultivating, he spent all his free time playing with little Ainin. At this moment, there was a chess table in front of them, and the black and white pieces were clearly separated. The brother and sister sat facing each other, looking quite decent. But Jiang Wang thought for a while and finally made up his mind. He put down the black piece and played the last stroke of the Jiang character. "Brother." Jiang Ainin used the white piece to play her in character and said with concern, "You've been thinking for so long. Are you not familiar with this character?" Some things weren't suitable to talk about with little Ainin, so Jiang Wang said perfunctorily, Sometimes it's hard to avoid forgetting the characters. Jiang Anan quickly took out a stack of copybooks from the squirrel box and smiled. You're still not familiar with it. I have copybooks here. You can practice with them. Don't be shy. He. Jiang Wang smiled and patted her little head. No need. I bought a lot. Enough to practice writing. I'll give you some later. The brother and sister were happy and harmonious. They pushed each other, and they were very harmonious. Yi Qingyu walked in at this time. Playing chess again? She smiled and looked at the chess game. You two are really evenly matched. Jiang Anan took the opportunity to skip the topic of copybooks and got up to hug Yi Qingyu. Sister Qingyu, did you come play with us? Yes. Yi Qingyu replied softly. Isn't it New Year's Eve? Your senior sister Wang is preparing the Phoenix flower lantern tonight. Do you want to go and take a look first? Okay. Jiang Anan agreed very decisively. She let go of Yi Qingyu and rushed out with a swift and decisive temperament. Stop! Jiang Wang hurriedly shouted. Jiang Anan reluctantly stopped and turned around. What's wrong? Jiang Wang picked up a stack of copybooks that Anan had casually stuffed under the chess table and stretched them forward. He put on a friendly smile and said, Why are you so careless? I forgot to bring my copybook. Oh! Jiang Anan slowly walked over and put the stack of copybooks back into the squirrel box. Then, she pouted and ran away. Yi Qingyu looked at this scene in amusement, only feeling that both her brother and sister were very interesting. After casually pouring a cup of tea, Jiang Wang made a pleased gesture and asked directly, Fellow Taoist Yi, do you have something to tell me? After Qi Yunshan's trip, the two of them became much closer. He no longer needed to be too deliberate when he spoke. There was a reason why she had purposely sent Anan away. Yi Qingyu's expression became somewhat serious. I just received news that the conflict between Zhuang and Yong suddenly intensified, and a war broke out in the early hours of this morning. Now, Zhuang's army has crossed the Qichang mountain range and defeated the Yong border army stationed north of the mountain range in one fell swoop. They entered Yang's territory and entered Lingbei Prefecture. Jiang Wang's face was expressionless, but the ripples that suddenly appeared in the teacup showed that his heart wasn't calm at all. This is too sudden, he said while holding the teacup. It was very sudden. Tonight was New Year's Eve. Everyone was preparing to welcome the new year, and there was a festive atmosphere everywhere. However, Zhuang actually started a war on this day. The target was very sudden. Zhuang was weak and Yong was strong. This was a fact that anyone with a discerning eye could see. No matter how weak Yong was, it was still a centipede that didn't fall over. No matter how much Zhuang changed with each passing day, its foundation was still lacking. Moreover, earlier in Buyao City, the three kingdoms of Zhuang, Luo, and Yong had already made an agreement not to fight. However, this time, it was suddenly torn apart by the supposedly weak Zhuang. According to the news that Yi Qingyu knew, the source of the entire incident was the dispute between the hunters of the two kingdoms in the Qichang mountain range. The hunters fought, causing the border armies of the two kingdoms to confront each other for 10 days. Yang's border army refused a hand over the murderer of the hunters in Shanyang City. The border army of Zhuang was filled with righteous indignation, and there were several times when major conflicts almost broke out. The Yong army was used to being unyielding, and the Zhuang army gradually gained confidence. The border armies of the two kingdoms refused to give way. In order to avoid a larger-scale conflict, the Zhuang court ordered their border army to retreat. It was said that the border army left in tears. They had no choice but to retreat under the military order, and they shed tears along the way. The incident erupted because of a soldier named Chen Shirkai. He disobeyed the military order and deserted during the retreat, leaving behind only a suicide note. He returned to the Qichang mountain range alone with a war saber. He single-handedly demanded the murderer of the hunters of Zhuang. After being refused, he charged toward the border army of Yong alone. In the end, he died in battle at the border. There is only one line of crooked words in his suicide note. The people of Zhuang cannot die in vain. After Chen Shirkai's suicide note was discovered, The entire border army stopped and refused to take another step back. The crowd was surging with emotions, and everyone wanted to fight. The generals of the border army couldn't even force the soldiers to retreat with their whips. In the end, they cried and wrote a letter asking for battle. The letter said that they were willing to take the lead and be the first to die in front of the two armies. The entire border army had 357 soldiers, and everyone wanted to die. It was said that when Zhuang Gaoxian heard of this, he smashed the dragon throne in the imperial court and said, "The people's hearts can be relied on, and the soldiers' hearts can be relied on. The hatred of generations will be avenged in a single day." As a result, he launched an attack on Yong and poured all his strength into the war. By the time Lingxiao Pavilion received the news, the Zhuang army had already crossed the Qichang mountain range and invaded Yong's Lingbei prefecture. "It's too sudden," Jiang Wang repeated. It was as if he could only suppress his agitation by repeating it. The hatred between Zhuang and Yong could be traced back to the founding of the two kingdoms. The entire process of Zhuang's establishment was the process of resisting Yong. Perhaps the hatred between the two kingdoms would never be erased. However, this war between the two kingdoms was too sudden. Yi Qingyu looked at him with some worry. "You should spend the new year with an in here. The war between Zhuang and Yong won't affect the Yun kingdom." The Yun kingdom was a kingdom above the clouds, and the entire kingdom was built on top of a mountain. In terms of geography, there was no conflict with other kingdoms. The Yun kingdom had always maintained a neutral position and never expanded its territory. The Yun kingdom's caravans traveled the world and maintained good relations with many other kingdoms. No matter how much the Zhuang and Yong fought, the Yun kingdom wouldn't be affected. Moreover, Yi Lingxiao had already attained insightful truth. Regardless of whether it was Zhuang or Yong, they wouldn't be stupid enough to find another perfected person to be their opponent outside of the war. Yi Qingyu was the one who understood Jiang Wang's experience the best. She was worried that Jiang Wang would participate in the war between Zhuang and Yong after hearing the news. Although a divine ability, internal residence, was powerful, in such a war, even God Ascension cultivators had the risk of dying, let alone internal residence cultivators. If he recklessly got involved, it was very likely that something would happen. "I know." Jiang Wang subconsciously rubbed the teacup. The texture of the porcelain made contact with his skin, giving him a complicated feeling. He repeated, "I know." Chapter 676. It's not just the Nine Rivers' profound armor. This time, even the White Feather Army that guards Exant and has been mobilized. Zhuang Gaoxian is personally leading the army. The great General Huangfu Duanming is at the vanguard, while the Prime Minister Duru Hui is the military advisor. The Vice Prime Minister Dong oversees Exant and city and commands a rear. Yi Qingyu sighed emotionally. The Zhuang kingdom could be said to be fighting with all its might this time. It's definitely not a small matter. It's already a battle of life and death with the kingdom of Yong. Has there been any activity from the Clear River Prefecture? Jiang Wang asked. Yi Qingyu furrowed her brows. "I don't know. There's still no news." However, Jiang Wang already understood that there was no other choice. Since Zhuang Gaoxian had decided to fight with all his might, the Clear River Prefecture would obviously fight Lanhe again. If the Clear River Prefecture had any other choice, it would have been razed to the ground before the battle began. With Jiang Wang's understanding, the Zhuang kingdom would definitely fight on both land and water this time. Their main battlefront would be crossing the Qichang mountain range, tearing through the border defenses and directly entering the heart of the kingdom of Yong. As for the water route, they would definitely invade Lanhe from Xinjiang. However, he did not know what had happened between the Clear River Prefecture's gradual alienation and refusal to cooperate with the Zhuang kingdom and the current battle to the death. Now that Zhuang Gaoxian had become an enlightened master, he had far too many ways to suppress the Clear River Prefecture. What about the arrest department? Jiang Wang asked again. The head of the arrest department, Ji Xian, had left him with a rather deep impression in the past. "I don't have any more information for now. I think they've probably mobilized all their forces as well. Yi Qingyu shook her head. Although Zhuang Gaoxian has the momentum to destroy Yong in this battle, the difference in strength between the two kingdoms is clear. The Zhuang kingdom definitely won't hold back. Clearly, she could not understand Zhuang Gaoxian's decision. She was not the only one who could not understand. Even Yiling Xiao and all the organizations in the western region, including the kingdom of Yong itself, had not thought that the Zhuang kingdom would attack them. Zhuang Gaoxian's enraged expedition inevitably seemed rash. Jiang Wang had always known that the soldiers of the Zhuang kingdom never lacked bravery. When Maplewood City was destroyed, the City Guard Army's main general, 2 deputy generals, and 5 deputy generals, including Zhao Lang and Wei Yin, whom Jiang Wang was familiar with, were all killed in the battle. Even those from the criminal arrest department who were usually unclean had died to the earthly calamity or at the hands of the White Bone Path demons. Everyone had fought to the death. Even City Lord Wei Qiji himself had died in battle above the City Lord's mansion. However, the deaths of the soldiers of Maplewood City were unsalvageable. Jiang Wang couldn't help but be moved when he suddenly heard the Zhuang country's border army crying blood and begging for battle. But when he calmed down and thought about it, there were many strange things about this matter. In this war launched by the Zhuang kingdom, Jiang Wang smelled something similar to the incident in Maplewood City. It was as if there was an invisible hand pushing everything in the dark. On the 21st day of the 12th lunar month, when Jiang Wang and the others finished the fight for the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace and left Qiyun Mountain, Zhuang Yang's border army was still confronting each other in the Qichang Mountains. The order to retreat should have been issued on the 22nd day of the 12th lunar month. On the 23rd day of the 12th lunar month, the Zhuang country's border army had already retreated. On that day, Jiang Wang only saw the flag of the Yong country's border army. The Zhuang country's border army was nowhere to be seen. At that time, the Yong country must have thought that the Zhuang country had already admitted defeat. On the same day, he met Du Ruhui in the sky above the Qichang Mountains. Du Ruhui even warned him, "You won't be able to fight." Furthermore, he sent him all the way back to the Lingxiao pavilion and personally communicated with Yiling Xiao. He said that he was testing the attitude of the surrounding powers and was afraid that the other powers would have bad thoughts about the Zhuang country's show of weakness. If Yiling Xiao didn't lie to Yi Qingyu, then he was deceived by Du Ruhui. Du Ruhui was indeed testing the surrounding powers, but he was probably testing whether or not the surrounding powers would affect this war. The Zhuang country's border army left the confrontation on the 22nd day of the 12th lunar month and declared that they wanted to keep the peace. However, this war was launched on the 29th day of the 12th lunar month. Before this, there were no ripples. Once it was launched, it was as if thunder had passed through the sky. Jiang Wang definitely wouldn't believe that the Zhuang country didn't make preparations in advance. There was a military book that said, "A lord cannot launch an army in anger, and a general cannot launch an attack in anger." Zhuang Gaoxian definitely wasn't a lord who launched an army in anger. Not long after he ascended the throne, he launched an attack on the Yong country. At that time, many people viewed this as a sign of his political immaturity. However, reality proved that it was precisely that battle that broke the Yong country's bluff and suppressed the Yong country's military's restlessness. As a result, the Zhuang country and Yong country's borders were peaceful for many years. The Zhuang country was able to develop steadily. Later on, when he hid in the depths of the palace to recuperate from his injuries, no matter how the Yong country provoked him, did he ever respond? The Qin people used the border to ambush the Guanglia, and the Qin and Chu cultivators wantonly fought within the Zhuang country's borders. Did the Zhuang country's entire court make a sound? If Jiang Wang hadn't personally experienced this, he probably wouldn't have heard of it. In Jiang Wang's opinion, Zhuang Gaoxian's personal expedition to launch this war probably had a plan in mind. Not only was it not launching an army in anger, but it was also very much in line with the art of war. Move when the benefits are appropriate. Stop when the benefits are not. If there were benefits to be gained, then fight. If there were no benefits to be gained, then endure. From the withdrawal of the Zhuang country's border army on the 22nd day of the 12th lunar month to the Zhuang country's court launching the war on the 29th day of the 12th lunar month, there were 7 days in between. The 29th day of the 12th lunar month was the New Year's Eve of the 31st year of the Taoist calendar. It was definitely not a coincidence that the date was chosen. Coincidentally, this was the date that would be least expected. The soldiers and civilians of both Zhuang and Yong were preparing for the new year. This day should have been the most peaceful, so it was the most unexpected. When a soldier committed suicide and charged into the enemy's ranks, there wasn't much of stir. Later on, there was a sudden explosion of public sentiment. Chun Shirkai committed suicide and charged into the enemy's ranks, but he actually left behind a suicide note. The suicide note he left behind wasn't confiscated immediately. Instead, it quickly spread throughout the army. From the suicide note of the border army soldier to the sobbing suicide note of the border army general, there was a clear progression of public sentiment. Du Ruhui was adept at controlling the hearts of the people. He claimed that the hearts of the people were like water, that he could control them. This matter was undoubtedly Du Ruhui's handiwork. Zhuang Gaoxian looked down on the big picture and conspired to conquer the Yong country. Du Ruhui united the hearts of the soldiers and the hearts of the people, so that the 3 armies could be used. It could truly be said that a mighty ruler could be identified, and a ruler and minister could be identified. Jiang Wang didn't tell Yi Qingyu about his conjectures. Most of the time, he was used to shouldering them himself. Seeing Jiang Wang's hand subconsciously caressing the teacup, Yi Qingyu softly said, "Let's go out for a walk. A year has already passed. The phoenix lanterns are very beautiful." A year had already passed? Yes, today was the new year. Last year on this night, he and Jiang Anan were in a barren mountain. At that time, although the world was vast, there was only the 2 of them, brother and sister, relying on each other for survival. That day, he set off fireworks for Anan all night. But now, he and Anan had new friends. They were both staying in the safe and peaceful Lingxiao secret grounds. They didn't have to worry about the dangers that could follow them at any time. They could welcome the new year in a happy and peaceful atmosphere. What day was it? What year was it? Jiang Wang released the teacup and curled the corners of his mouth. Okay. P.S. A lord must not launch an army in anger, and a general must not attack in anger. Move when it suits your interests, and stop when it doesn't. Sun Tzu's Art of War. Chapter 677. Phoenix lanterns were a specialty of the Yun country. The structure was complicated, and the size was relatively large. The petals were like the feathers of a phoenix. When it was lit, the figure of a phoenix would fly on the wall of the lantern, hence the name. Every year on New Year's Eve, the Lantern Festival in Yun City would attract a lot of people, not only the locals of the Yun country, but also people from other countries. The Lantern Festival not only had beautiful scenery, but also the trade of treasures. The scale of the trade was not as big as the Yunhe Trade Fair, but there were still many things that could not be seen on ordinary days. Whether it was cultivators or ordinary people in the Yun country, they were used to buying some treasures for themselves on this day to welcome the new year. When the Yunhe Trade Fair began on the 16th of December, they were still in Qiyun Mountain. Yi Qingyu said that they could not miss the Lantern Festival. The round-faced senior sister Xiao Wang was a master of weaving phoenix lanterns. In the entire Ling Xiao secret land, her phoenix lanterns were the most beautiful. On this day, Jiang Anan had been pestering her. On the cloud platform in the center of the Ling Xiao secret land, dozens of phoenix lanterns had been placed. Once they were lit, they would fly into the sky. Senior sister Xiao Wang was in front of a semi-finished lantern. Her 10 fingers were flying, manipulating the translucent silk thread. Her movements were dexterous. Jiang Anan moved a small wooden stool and sat next to her. She opened her big sparkling eyes and was entranced. Senior sister Xiao Wang, the phoenix flowers you weave are really beautiful, Jiang Anan said enviously. Senior sister Xiao Wang smiled proudly. Of course, I have liked phoenix lanterns since I was a child. As she spoke, she pulled out her hand and gently pressed Jiang Ainan's small face. She turned her gaze slightly and met Jiang Wang's clear and calm eyes. Her heart suddenly stopped. Big Brother Jiang is looking at me. Big Brother Jiang is looking at me. She shouted in her heart. His eyes are so serious. He is smiling at me. Her heart was surging, but her face was very reserved. She only nodded her slightly round chin, showing some careless gentleness. Then she turned back and forced herself to calmly weave the phoenix flowers. But her ears were already red in an instant. At that time, under the tall cloud platform, a group of disciples of the Ling Shao Pavilion came and went, preparing for the Lantern Festival at night. Jiang Wang stood in the crowd, quietly looking over here. Meeting senior sister Xiao Wang's gaze, Jiang Wang politely smiled as a greeting. Of course, he was looking at An. Little An looked at the phoenix flowers for a while, then turned to look for her brother. When she saw Jiang Wang, she smiled sweetly and turned back to look at the phoenix flower lanterns. She was very curious as to why the shadow of the phoenix flower lantern could transform into a phoenix. Senior sister Xiao Wang said that she was going to release 999 phoenix lanterns tonight. They would be more beautiful than the stars in the night sky. She liked to look at the stars very much. She didn't know what could be more beautiful than the stars. Therefore, she was looking forward to it. It was easy for children to indulge in the things they liked. She was so focused that she did not notice that her brother's figure had already disappeared into the crowd. On New Year's Eve of the 3918th year of the Taoist calendar, the Western region was not peaceful. This was especially true for the Yong people who had been invaded by foreign enemies. In the entire Yong kingdom, from the ruler and officials to the common people, no one had ever imagined that the weak Zhuang kingdom would one day come knocking on their door. Many Yong citizens firmly believed that the Zhuang kingdom was only a small branch of their country that would be taken back sooner or later. When it would be taken back depended on when the Yong kingdom made up its mind. Even though the Zhuang kingdom had been established for more than 300 years, many Yong citizens still did not recognize the Zhuang kingdom as an independent country. Therefore, when the Zhuang kingdom brazenly declared war, many people did not believe it was true and thought it was a rumor. However, in reality, in the early morning of the 29th day of the 12th lunar month, the Zhuang kingdom's vanguard had already broken through the Yong kingdom's border troop stationed at the Qichang mountain range and entered the Lingbei prefecture. That night, on New Year's Eve of the 3918th year of the Taoist calendar, the Zhuang kingdom had already broken through the entire Lingbei prefecture's defenses and marched into the Yang prefecture. It could be said to be an irresistible force. Duke Ying of the Yong kingdom, Beigong Yu, led the troops to attack the Zhuang kingdom's army head-on and drive them back to the south of the Qichang mountain range. However, halfway through, the troops changed direction. Because the Luo kingdom's army came from the west and joined forces with the Qing River Manor of the Zhuang kingdom, the Lana Manor was in imminent danger. The Zhuang kingdom had secretly reached an agreement with the Luo kingdom and even persuaded the Qingjiang Manor to ally with the notorious Luo kingdom's navy. What was even more frightening was that the kingdom of the northern region, which the Yong kingdom had always been most vigilant against, also made a move. The Crimson Horse Guard, ranked 7th among the 10 great cavalry armies of the world, had already come north. The Zhuang army had broken through the strategic town of Lingbei in the south of the Yong kingdom. It was as if they were announcing some sort of signal. In an instant, the entire front erupted into war. Jing and Luo both dispatched their troops. Just a day ago, the state of Yong was still an established power in the western border and had once contended for supremacy with the state of Jing. Although they couldn't be compared to countries like Qin and Jing, it was still common for them to surpass small countries like Zhuang and Shun. However, in the short span of a day, the situation suddenly changed and the country was in danger of being overthrown. At this time, the retired emperor of the Yong kingdom, Han Yin, had broken out of seclusion. Donning his armor, he left Tianming Manor alone. He wanted to meet the emperor as a king, and the Zhuang was envious of the Yiyang Manor. Everyone knew that the current king of Yong, Han Yin, was only a figurehead. The highest authority in all of Yong had always been in the hands of retired Emperor Han Yin. As for the Yong Kingdom's prime minister, Qi Maoxian, he personally oversaw the Jing'an Prefecture to welcome the possible arrival of the Jing Kingdom's army. Jing'an Prefecture was a strategic military stronghold in the northern part of the Yong Kingdom. It had always been a defensive line, with the Kingdom of Jing as the imaginary enemy. The Crimson Horse Guards were famous throughout the world. Qi Maoxian relied on Jing'an Prefecture's massive military forces and majestic city walls and was absolutely capable of battle. The Yong Kingdom had deep foundations. Prime Minister Qi Maoxian went north to resist the Crimson Horse Guard. Duke Baigongyu went north to reinforce the Lana Prefecture and the Luo and Xinjiang Prefecture's combined naval forces. Regardless of whether it was the Kingdom of Jing or the Kingdom of Luo, they only dispatched one army. Only the Zhuang Kingdom fought with all its might. For a time, the key to victory or defeat in this war rested on the Yiyang Prefecture. The retired emperor of the Yong Kingdom, Han Yin, was a figure of the same generation as Zhuang Chengxian. Over 300 years ago, the mighty ruler of the Yong Kingdom, Han Zhou, died on the battlefield. The crown prince mysteriously died in the Eastern Palace, and soon after, the three princes fought for the throne. The war between the three princes caused the already weakened Yong Kingdom to become even more chaotic. However, the one who ultimately ascended to the throne wasn't any of the three princes. It was said that the subjects of the Yong Kingdom felt that the three princes were attacking each other, disregarding the people's livelihood and causing chaos in the Yong Kingdom. They believed that the three princes weren't wise rulers, so they supported Han Zhou's younger brother, Han Yin, to succeed the throne. Han Yin sat on the dragon throne in the Destiny Prefecture and personally led the troops. In the short span of a year, he defeated the three princes one by one, completely controlling the military and political power of the Yong Kingdom and stabilizing the precarious situation of the Yong Kingdom. He even repelled the invasion of the Kingdom of Jing. He was viewed as a wise ruler who turned the tide, and his reputation was comparable to that of the mighty ruler of his generation, Han Zhou. Then, with the momentum of the world, he came south to quell the rebellion of the Zhuang Kingdom. In that war, Zhuang Chengxian personally guarded the Qichang mountain range and didn't yield an inch, stubbornly resisting the Yong Kingdom's attack. Under the leadership of Song Hengjiang, the Xinjiang Prefecture, which had formed an alliance with Zhuang Chengxian, fought with all its might, killing until the Lanhe River was dyed red, opening a path for the Zhuang Kingdom. Later on, the Zhuang Kingdom joined the Daoist vassal states and received a certain degree of protection, becoming a nail that the Kingdom of Jing planted in the Western realm. The failure to pacify the Zhuang Kingdom and allow the Zhuang Kingdom to continue was an important reason why Han Yin didn't surpass Han Zhou in many people's hearts. After all, Zhuang Chengxian was only a general under Han Zhou's command. When Han Zhou was alive, he was honest and obedient, working hard without complaint. However, Han Yin wasn't able to defeat Zhuang Chengxian. It could be said that the Zhuang Kingdom was the nail that was nailed into Han Yin's heart the deepest. This time, it was Han Yin who pulled out the nail in his eye, or Zhuang Gaoxian who inherited the will of Taizu and defeated Changyang. It was all in the Battle of Yiyang Prefecture. P.S. Zhuangyang's War of the Kingdom begins. In order to make it easier for everyone to understand the plot, I specially posted a hand-drawn map of the situation of the Western Realm and a general map of the Yong Kingdom on the public account What Is So Serious? RJQS000. Readers can go and have a look. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.